Okay, great. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Council, and I think we're at 7 o'clock. Let me just need to make more space. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. Michelle, can you turn on your mics so that you can do a roll call of our attendance of council?
Yes. Councilman Gwynn,
Present.
Councilman Burke,
Ryan, you gotta unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. Here.
Councilwoman Blackwell,
Present.
Councilman Sadiq,
Yes.
Councilwoman Faralia,
Present.
Councilman Silva,
Present.
Councilman Barnett,
Present.
Councilman Wagner,
Here.
Council President Wentz,
Here.
and Councilman Tunis.
Here.
Also to acknowledge that we have our solicitors, Sean Kilkenny, Courtney Richardson. We have our mayor, Barbara Ann Keffer. We have our CAO, Vince Rangione. We also have Alexis, our municipal clerk. We have Ryan McCann. We have Scott Alberts. We have Chris McSween. And joining us in the near future will be our treasurer, David Heyman. So just to acknowledge who else is with us. And Scott is and Allison are working on the technical aspects of the realm. So thank you. Okay, great. So in the agenda, now it's Council President's turn. I actually wrote a letter to the residents of Upper Darby to talk about things that we've been doing for on the council side of the equation. So I'm just going to read that letter. Dear residents of Upper Darby Township, it's been over 100 days of, sorry, I think I just put my letter on top of my speaker or my microphone. So dear residents of Upper Darby Township, it's been over 100 days of new leadership of Upper Darby Township. We have heard from Mayor Keffer about the changes she and her administration have made. Here are some changes that have been made to make Upper Darby Township Council more transparent. These changes have been for the benefit of the public and for council members. We've created a new Facebook page for Upper Darby Township Council. We currently have 364 likes and 417 followers. It was created in January. Prior to COVID-19, all 2020 meetings were filmed Facebook Live on the council page. After COVID-19, the YouTube link for the meetings has been posted on that same page. All appointments and awardees appear on our agendas. All resumes for appointments are emailed to council members prior to the meetings. All resolutions and ordinances are in written form for the first Wednesday of the month and are on the website before the meeting. Council has the opportunity to make changes to ordinances prior to the first reading and changes to resolutions prior to the voting. We hosted our first Black History Month and Veterans Expo, and awards from Council for Black History Month were given to members of our community. All council members and the mayor were given a binder with a copy of the Home Rule Charter, the Administrative Code, Township Directory, Right to Know ordinances, and other necessary forms. There was also such a binder created for the public, which includes all the agendas, ordinances, resolutions, event handouts given to council members. Residents are able to quote specific sections of ordinances and resolutions being discussed for approval. After COVID-19, more residents were given the opportunity to weigh in on public comment through email and phone messages, and more days to send in their public comments than an in-person meeting would allow. Council folders are delivered to council members the day of or day before the meeting. The ordinances and resolutions are also emailed to them during the week and the week before and of the meeting. These are things we have done so far to improve transparency and the way council functions. Thank you to all those who have participated in our meetings and for those who have provided us with constructive criticism. So I just wanted to share that. We've gotten a lot of comments have been made on what we've been doing, and I just wanted to share what we've done so far. So next up is Mayor Barbara Ann Keffer. So please take it away, Mayor.
Hi, everybody. To start out with, today, the Finance Director, John McMullen, and Vince Rongione, CAO, and myself met with the people from eConsult who are working with the township through the stamp program to come up with a 5-year financial plan. And that's a little bit tough given, we're in the midst of this pandemic, but one of the things that we were looking at were the tax revenues up until April 30th. And although our taxes have gone up by like 2%, the collections are down by 10%, which eConsult thought was a little unusual. And part of it might be that the processing is a little bit slower because we've been working on the staggered schedules, but it's something that we're keeping our eyes on. They've also, we meet with them every 2 weeks just to catch up on things. So that was something that we talked about today, and trying to project what our revenues and expenditures might be is something that they're working on for the next couple months. And I have a proclamation this week is Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. So I'm just going to read the proclamation. Whereas good mental health is a key component in a child's healthy development, and Children's Mental Health Week provides an opportunity to focus on this important matter while celebrating the accomplishments of children and families affected by mental health concerns. And whereas, according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services, 1 in 5 children is diagnosed with a mental health condition. And whereas research has shown early identification and appropriate treatment of mental health disorders among children and adolescents provide them better opportunities to lead full and productive lives. And whereas children and youth with mental health challenges and their families benefit from access to timely services and supports that are family-driven, youth-guided, and culturally appropriate, they also benefit from the integration of behavioral health and primary care, education, and child welfare. And whereas it is important that children and adolescents, along with their families and communities, learn about warning signs of mental health disorders and where to obtain necessary assistance and treatment. And whereas obtaining a full and accurate diagnosis of a child requires gathering information from diverse sources, including the family, school, and others involved with the child. Now, therefore, I, Barbara Ann Keffer, Mayor of Upper Darby Township, along with Township Council, do hereby proclaim May 3rd through 9th, 2020 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Week in Upper Darby Township, and I urge my fellow residents to recognize its observance. And this pandemic makes it even rougher on children and families. The county has a mental health number for people to call. It's the Crisis Connections Team, and the number is 855-889-7827. So this is we've been doing this for a long time with since the emergency declaration. We recently started the furloughs for about 60 township employees, and I know we feel like things aren't really changing that much and not that quickly, but I'm just happy with the way council's pulled together to do these meetings and keep business as usual. And that's all I have for right now.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next up we have committee reports. Planning, Zoning, and Building Code Committee, Chairman, Councilman Gwynn, members, Councilwoman Billups and Councilman Bonnet. Sean, Solicitor Kilkenny, can we get a brief on ordinance number 3072?
Sure, I'll be happy to, and I believe Mr. Chris McSween is on the phone as well to ask more specific questions, answer more specific questions, because I know he is going to be the one implementing this if it's passed by council. This document's been before you for over a month, but it has changed, maybe not in substance, but definitely in form. I want to, Councilor Bonnet brought it to my attention that there might be some potential copyright or some other issues related to that. Ms. Richardson from our office contacted the International Codes Council and received an email from them. Initially was told our older version, which had a lot more of the substance of the ordinance listed specifically, spelling everything out, was okay. Councilor Bernard had some different information. So what I decided to do is take the most cautious approach, because obviously Upper Darby or no municipality wants to deal with any kind of copyright issues. So we listed specifically the International Property Maintenance Code, and also we also went ahead and then specifically laid out what the amendments are, what was changed. So it would be clear if anybody was looking at this, they were understanding what we're doing. I want to thank Mr. McSween and also Mr. McCann, who I believe is on the phone as well, to answer any questions, because I know Courtney and myself, and along with them, worked a lot in this document in the last couple of days, and hopefully this is a good product for council. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize some of the points as well, and then open it up to Chris and Mr. McCann, Mr. McSween and Mr. McCann to answer any kind of questions. So in paragraph 1, we're implementing the 2015 International Property Maintenance Code with local amendments, including section 705, which we talked about actually at our last meeting, talking about fire safety inspections, chapters 9 and 10 for rental dwelling licenses, rental licenses, and 10 related to the sale of properties. The International Property Maintenance Code, there's a link to where it could be found. Where there's a conflict between the 2015 International Property Maintenance Code and this ordinance and previous Upper Darby Township ordinances regulating property maintenance in the township, the provisions of this ordinance shall control. To prevent conflict, the 2015 National Property Maintenance Code and previous township ordinances regulating property maintenance ordinances, and we listed 2621, 2736, 2845, 2891, 2905, 2919, 2939, 2951, 2992, and rental ordinance repealed in its entirety. This was at the request of Mr. McSween and Mr. McCann. They wanted to be as specific as possible, but to prevent any ambiguity. What we're doing here too is section 2. So we amend the sections of the International Property Maintenance Code, sections 102 for the applicability of other codes. Some general provisions, who is actually enforcing the code, violations and penalties, and such. There is also significant definitions related to this. All of these definitions are amendments to the International Property Maintenance Code, so they wouldn't be found on the website if you went ahead and looked at it. Section 302 regulates sidewalks and driveways. Section 302.4 deals with what exactly is an illegal weed, in that it's 10 inches. That's often a bone of contention in this municipality and others. Deals with bamboo. Everyone realizes bamboo can be an invasive species. 3028 deals with abandoned vehicles, working heavily with Mr. McCann on that. Disabled vehicles, repair vehicles, specifically when they're on driveways, can be kind of unsightly. Deals with the records provision of this. Scrolling down. Okay, section 704, we're adopting the international fire protection system and fire safety inspections, which is 705, 704, and 705, with very few amendments. Section 9 deals with the rental license provision. Pardon me, I'm still scrolling down. Chapter 10 deals with inspections for resale of properties. Deals with fines, an inconsistency clause, a severability clause, and how this, if someone was unhappy with the result, how it would be appealed. Which references one of our previous ordinances in Upper Darby, adopting in 2004, adopting the BOCA code. Essentially, if there were some kind of appeal, we have a cooperation agreement with the Delaware County Appeals Board related to the UCC that also hears property maintenance appeals, and they would hear that, which is actually good for Upper Darby because there could be no implications of bias. Also, with the BOCA code, there are specific provisions that you have to have, like an electrician on the board, a realtor, and things like that. In a township like Upper Darby, that's probably not a problem because you have a big population. Other times people move or don't want to serve on boards, and it could be problematic. That really kind of concludes my summary of the International Property Maintenance Code, and I'd be happy to answer any more legalistic or drafting questions. If people had substantive questions, I believe Mr. McSween or Mr. McCann would probably better be able to talk about the enforcement of this.
Great, thank you. Councilman Burke, you have your hand raised.
Thank you,
Go
Laura.
ahead.
To refer to this, going to page 21, which is, I'm looking for section 1003. If we look under violations, the first sentence says, violations discovered as per section of 1002 and 1003. We're missing section 1003.
And Mr. McSween or Mr. McCann can talk to that. We're actually not missing it. We're adopting what's actually in the code. What we're only listing is amendments. I don't know if Mr. McSween or Mr. McCann want to talk to that.
Go ahead, Ryan, or whichever one of you wants to answer, you're welcome to.
What was the specific section you were referencing?
1004 violations. The first line says, and there's no section 1003 in the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like there was that was one that was changed recently. So what it's referencing is 102 and 102.1.3. It's just the difference between residential and commercial. There used to be a difference in the scope of the inspections, but that's not going to be the case anymore. And the residential and commercial inspections are going to both include interior and exterior. So that section is, just needs the numbering.
Yeah,
adjusted.
how should it read so it can be very clear going forward?
Okay, it should reference 1002.3.1 and 1002.3.2.
Okay. We'll make sure that's inserted. Yeah.
And one more question. In violations, 100, because of the life safety issue needing a temporary access certificate. If we have a life safety violation, we need to let people go back in and fix that problem. Am I correct? Now, do we have to give them a temporary access permit to go back in?
Correct. So that is language direct from the state law covering resale transactions. So yes, they have to work with the township to correct the violation. But that's kind of a fluid process. So it's written broadly so we can come up with a plan to address each individual life safety violation because they're not always the same.
So, okay, thanks. But at the way this is written, I believe we're in violation of Act 133 on this. Would that be, or am I just misunderstanding the wording here?
Okay, yeah, you're misunderstanding the wording. So what we're not going to issue the resale certificate if there's a life safety violation. That's not saying that you can't have a conditional permit to fix the work. You don't need a conditional permit, you just need a permit to fix the work. And application for that permit would discuss the process of when you can access the property, how you can access the property, what safeguards have to be in place. That's separate from the resale cert.
Okay, so, all right. Just, I guess
So
the way I read it. Thanks, Ryan.
No problem.
Okay, Bob, you had some questions? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Specifically, I was wondering what happened to Section 8 or Chapter 8, depending upon which version you're looking at. Is it also that there were no changes and as a result didn't get listed in your presentation?
So it's twofold. There were no changes to Section 8. And we didn't really need to adopt Section 8 the way the ordinance was formatted previously, because we took out almost all of the specific references, and Chapter 8 is reference standards. That's where it references the 2015 International Building Code, the 2015 International Existing Building Code. To make this ordinance more adaptable in the future, it simply says generally the currently adopted building code. Pennsylvania is typically far behind on what standards are adopted, and there's sometimes a mismatch of years of code additions that are adopted. So it doesn't really work to use the reference standards in that book.
Okay. My comment was just in general, going from the change of what you had previously given us to how this was set up. It was hard to figure out why you were doing some of the things that you were doing.
I completely agree.
Particularly since I don't have a copy of the 2015 code, I can't see what they're saying to see what you're adjusting in it. All I see is the comments of your
That was the point of the original format, but because of the copyright issue that kept coming up, we just deferred to this method.
I appreciate
used in the past.
I appreciate, but it's impossible for, I'll call it a layperson such as myself, who doesn't have the background and experience in what you guys do on a daily basis to know what all these things are.
I passionately agree with you on that one.
Thank you for your help.
Do you have any other questions? I know you had a few.
I did. There were several things that I had, but a lot of them are minor and they are just sections. And I'm sure that when we get into a more detailed meeting, it'll be better understood.
This should be that detailed meeting to a degree. I mean, the point is to discuss this this ordinance so that we can move forward. So here you go. Everyone's here. The players are all here. I know you had specific questions and concerns that were substantial. This is a great time to ask them.
I did, but as I said, without the 2015 code in front of me, I can't get that information.
Okay. Okay, Don, I see you waving or clapping your hands. Go ahead and turn your mic on.
How do you do that?
There you
Thank you,
go.
Mark. And this is to Bob. Bob, I sort of agree with you that there's a lot here. It's a very important ordinance. I do want to, although I haven't had a chance to get into it in great detail either, and I do have to have the actual 2015 property maintenance code on the ICC website available to me at the same time. I think that's what you were saying too, Bob. That I think it'd be appropriate to schedule another meeting of the committee. And I want to compliment you for the way you've handled this. I think it's been a very thorough process. I think we have to continue that process. And to the point where that we as a committee, that you, me, and Michelle can bring this back to council with a recommendation that it can be approved. And I can't say right now, although I have to say that I'm very pleased with the format. I think that although I haven't read it word for word, I think I can see plainly that this format is consistent with what I had envisioned as being a copyright compliant format. So, and I trust that as I review this, I'll continue to confirm that opinion. So I would strongly recommend that we have an opportunity as a committee to meet again offline and bring this back to council, because I noticed that it's not scheduled for adoption until the June meeting. If you look at the last page.
No, it's right, but it has to have its first reading in the May meeting in order for it to be adopted in the June meeting.
I get it. I get it.
So-
But I think if we can, maybe between the next 2 weeks, which gives us time maybe to have another
Yes.
meeting
Definitely.
and bring it back to get to council after the 2 weeks from now and have it drafted in final form for introduction. It gives
Okay,
us the
great.
opportunity.
Yes, no, I agree that the committee should meet. I just wanted to make sure that we were not necessarily stopping it from being introduced in the May 20th meeting.
Okay.
That's all.
No,
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions on this ordinance? Sean, you had a.
Yeah.
you-
I put my hand up. Yeah.
seen that?
I'm getting good at this.
Okay.
Let me put it down here. What I would suggest, perhaps, I think the easiest thing at council's discretion, meaning Mr. Gwynn, Councilor Bonnet, and Councilor Billups, that at your committee meeting, perhaps Mr. McSween, McCann, and either me or Ms. Richardson attend, so that we're kind of part of that and can make contemporaneous, adjustments, or perhaps answer any questions, and perhaps that would make the process flow a little better, either virtually,
I agree.
or in person, or however you want to do it. So, yeah.
that
Yes.
would be fine.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely agree with that. The last time the committee met on this ordinance, I had it up on my screen, and that as changes were being made, I was making it into the ordinance directly in red, so that everyone could clearly see those changes, so that, we all knew exactly what we were talking about and so forth. So yes, we would definitely love to have you join us, and so that we can do it in that fashion. Vince and the mayor were there as well. So
Yeah, I just have a
Go ahead.
procedural question, clarification. Last meeting, I thought this ordinance did have its first reading. It was tabled during that reading. So I'm not sure. I think it can be adopted this month. I think it already did have its first reading.
it was
So
a
I just
very,
want to clarify
Substantially
on the
different.
procedure. And I will also note that countless township staff hours and taxpayer dollars have been wasted in order to produce the document in this format, which Councilman Gwynn is now complaining about. Those tax dollars were wasted at Councilman Gwynn's urging. And so I find it mystifying that we would want to continue down that road. That is obviously a decision for council, but I'd hope for clarification on the procedural part.
Vince, I believe that because the ordinance has changed so drastically from a 68-page ordinance to a lesser, I see your hand, I got you. I'm
It
gonna,
hasn't changed.
the
The
format,
substance of the ordinance has not changed.
okay, so the substance is still the same, it's just the format changed. Basically, the substance of that we had discussed prior to, in that committee meeting that was, took a lot of staff time. The substance is still there. It's just the format changed, right? To be, okay. So if you're saying that the format, that the substance, the meat and potatoes of the or initial ordinance is the same, and it's just the style of which it was presented has changed.
That's correct.
Then, okay. So.
I mean, I'm
Sean,
just asking the procedural question. I don't know the answer, but.
Yep. Sean, can you give us a little more?
Yeah,
clarity?
there's been, but I don't think council or anybody's authorized this to be advertised, which I think would happen at the main meeting.
Yes,
If
yes.
this were a special meeting after this, we could go ahead and do that, but it hasn't. So I think that would be the problem with adopting or potentially adopting it at the May meeting, besides just any procedural concerns within the ordinance that any of the counselors brought up tonight or may bring up in a future committee meeting.
Right. Okay. So, John, I do see you, but I do need to go to Matt because he's had his hand up and he hasn't spoken yet. We'll do one round of everyone and then we'll go back and do a second round. Okay. So, Don, hold your note. I have you on my list. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually kind of agreed, though I didn't have an issue with the previous format, but if they feel like there's a copyright issue or whatever, then I understand why they're doing this. But when we do present this to the public after, if and when this ordinance is passed, are we also going to present the International Property Maintenance Code with it? So what I thought was the beauty of this initial document, the pre-format change document, was that it basically illustrated all of the requirements in one location, which I think is something that is I think that's important for our residents. So they have something that they could always reference immediately and get the answers that they need to determine what is in compliance, what would require to become in compliance. But I'm hoping that when this is posted, I mean, I see the footnote here, I see the URL referencing the International Maintenance or Property Maintenance Code, but would it be admissible to also present this document and the International Maintenance Code together, like online or, at the township, so people have it to reference it when they're preparing a rental property for inspection?
One point, the URL that they have there,
Your micro, hold on, Bob, wait a second. So Chris, can you, I mean, I would think it would make sense to have the international property or international code
available.
available on the website.
Yeah, people, or
Yes,
Council
thank
President, yeah, people can obviously access it. That's why the link is there. The issue with the mixing of the two, our ordinance with the full 2015 property maintenance code, is it would require Upper Darby to spend a couple $1,000s in licensing. That was the reason for the change and why we went back to, as the ICC would call it, the simple format, which enables us to do this without having to pay license fees. That was the reason for it. But obviously, someone could obviously click on the ICC's link at any time, view it, and if we were at a meeting, there's no reason why someone could not, or this Zoom meeting, click on it and read it and access it as well. It just couldn't be listed in our own published document without additional licensing.
Okay,
There
but
is,
we
there is
can,
one point. The
okay.
URL that they have,
Bob, wait a second. Matt's still in the midst of his
oh,
comment.
I just to be clear, then, we can list ordinance 3072, which is somewhat of an amendment of the International Property Maintenance Code, but also the Property Maintenance Code. I mean, could that be set alongside with it without changes, without paying for the additional licensing?
Sean is indicating yes.
That was my question. All right, super. Thank you very much.
And Courtney has fixed the URL on the document itself. So, okay, thank you, Courtney. Okay. So were there anyone who hasn't already spoken that wants to make a comment on this ordinance? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, I see none. Okay, Bob, you wanted to speak, and then Don wants to speak. So go ahead, Bob.
Courtney may have already done the response there. The URL was for 2018
She
Code.
corrected it.
and should be 2015.
She
Those
has
are
corrected
among
it.
the little things.
Yes, she sent me a message saying that she's already corrected it. Are there anything else you wanted to add, Bob?
We'll get into the little detail pieces later.
Okay, Don?
Thank you, Laura. Vince, I take major issue with your comments that this is a waste of expense or time or whatever you said, cost. In the interest of being pretty thorough, I think it takes the time to do that. And I think Councilman Gwynn did a great job as chairman of this committee and making sure that it was given the attention that it deserves to have. And this is no small task to undertake the adoption of a code. This, in fact, is the right way to adopt a code. And the ICC permits us to have 3 copies on file, 3 hard copies on file that are available for public inspection and use within the township building, of course. Or as the Sisler said, that anyone can go online and have free access, can't be downloaded, but they have free access to an online version of this code. And it simply said that we are simply adopting amendments. By virtue of reference, we are adopting the rest of the code. And it takes you, as it's written, section by section through the code. Some sections and chapters are actually added to the code that's published by the ICC. But this is the proper way of doing it. It's customary among most code enforcement officers to do it this way, and also our code departments to do it this way. And people that are familiar with codes, this will not be any surprise to them as to its format. So I think that taking the time to review this more thoroughly, understand it, and enable this committee to bring it back to council with a recommendation, it's the right way to go about adopting an ordinance of this magnitude and significance to Upper Darby Township. So again, Bob, I think you're doing it the right way. And I stand ready to attend another meeting with you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any other comments or concerns on ordinance number 3072? Okay, knowing that it's going to go, that the committee is going to meet, I do plan on putting it on the agenda for May 20th, and then we will hopefully move forward with it at that point in time. Okay. So then, Bob, do you want to continue your committee meeting itself to see if anyone else has anything else for your committee?
Does anybody else on the committee have anything to bring forward to the body? Anybody else? Seeing none, hearing none? Anybody on the council have anything else to bring forward committee?
Nope.
Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point in time, we are moving on to Law and Government Rules and Procedures Committee. Councilwoman Billups is chair. Councilmember Blackwell and Silva are members of the committee. I also want to acknowledge that I misspoke earlier. Scott Alberts is here on a head of department capacity to be here for, I believe, ordinance number 3076, which is part of this committee's report. So I just wanted to let you know that Scott is on board to help answer any questions we may have. So go ahead, or actually, can we get a Solicitor Kilkenny, can you give us a introduction of 3076?
Sure, President Wentz. I think before I introduce it, I'll give a little history, just so it maybe sets the context a little bit to understand that this is not done in a vacuum. According to our research, the Administrative Code in August 17th, 1994 adopted some standards here related to personnel rules, 601, the classification of township employees, 6.02, appointment promotion, performance review, and the residency requirement. And kind of evolving from that.
John, your sound got funky.
I'm sorry.
Your sound got weird. I mean, it was perfectly fine, and then it got weird, like you were in a tunnel.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I don't know, it's the same. It's a weird tunnel thing. It happens sometimes when you're speaking and you've done nothing to touch it or do anything, but it changes. And I don't know why it changes on you. Try again.
I'm sorry.
There you are. There you are.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. All right. So the issues. Many issues with this, but I'm going to point to the 1994 ordinance, paragraphs D and E. All police and paid fire. Paragraph D was all police officers and paid firefighter hires, full-time employees of Darby Township must either be or become within 6 months after completion of their probation period and continue to remain during the term of their employment a resident of Upper Darby. E. All persons other than police officers and paid firefighters hired as full-time employees of Upper Darby Township must either be or become within 6 months after the date of hiring and continue to remain during their employment a resident of Upper Darby. So that was the law in Upper Darby from 1994 to 2000 to August in 2019 that we know of. And then Ordinance 3059, which was adopted, ordained on August 21st, 2019, just less than a year ago, basically said in its ordinance, Section 6.02, appointment, promotion, performance review, and residency requirement is deleted in its entirety and amended to read as follows. And how it reads is, in order to ensure that the most qualified persons are employed by the township, appointment, promotion, or demotion shall be based on merit considerations and personal fitness for a job, and shall be free of personal, religious, racial, and political bias. The Township of Upper Darby is an equal opportunity employer and shall not discriminate against any applicant or employee based on the individual's age, race, sex, color, creed, religious creed, political affiliation, national origin, or an individual's actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. All new employees shall be regarded as probationary employees for a period of 6 months following the date their employment began. Such employee may be discharged during his or her probationary period by the township in its absolute discretion. So essentially for the last, 8 months, the residency requirement was taken out of Upper Darby law. I was asked to take a stab at the direction of the mayor and the administration, a new 602, and I'm going to go ahead and read it just so the public understands, and then it's up to council to debate it and such. So 602, appointment, promotion, performance review, and residence requirement. In order to ensure that the most qualified persons are employed by the township, appointment, promotion, or demotion shall be based on merit considerations and personal fitness for a job, and shall be free of religious, personal, religious, and racial bias. The Township of Upper Darby is an equal opportunity employer and shall not discriminate against any applicant or employee based on an individual's age, race, sex, color, religious creed, national origin, or an individual's actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. All new, there were two other classes you added. I'm sorry, Counselor Wentz. I must have an older version in front of me.
Yes, you do. So at after religious creed, voter status, veterans, then national origin.
Okay, yeah, I had an older version in front of me. I
Yep.
apologize.
That's okay.
All employees shall be regarded as probationary employees for a period of 6 months following their date of employment began. Such employee may be discharged during his or her probationary period by the township in its absolute discretion. B, performance of merit and fitness for appointment, promotion, or demotion shall be based on systematic evaluation by the department head in consultation with the mayor and chief administrative officer. The determination shall consider experience and education levels, wherever each is judged to be in the best interest of the township. This chief administrative officer shall assure that each employee's performance is reviewed annually by the respective department heads. This review shall at a minimum include determinations of dependability and quality and quantity of work. This review shall be made part of the employee's personnel
Sean?
file and
Sean?
shall be.
Sean,
Yes.
hold on. Your copy is really different than the one we have.
Oh, okay.
So if you look back, Alexis had, or I think I forwarded, Alexis sent out an email over, let me find it and send it to you directly.
Yeah, if you just send me the most recent version, I'll read it.
So Alexis, I know you're on. Can you send Sean the most recent version of it? So that the most recent version of 3076.
Yes,
I think I CC'd you on it when I sent it out. Or when it was sent out, and it has the voter status and here we go. And veterans on it. Sorry,
Okay.
guys. Yeah, yeah, okay.
No, I apologize.
Senate.
Okay, so I just sent it and
All
Alexis,
right, I'll be happy to read it once I receive it.
okay, you should be getting it within seconds. And you may have gotten from both Alexis and myself.
I did. There you
All
go.
right, so we were both quick
All right.
like honey.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, because I think what we had for your B was slightly different than what you were reading, and I.
Okay, determination of merit and fitness, this is B. For appointment, promotion, or demotion shall be based on systemic evaluation by department head in consultation with the mayor and CAO. Determination shall consider experience and education levels wherever and whenever each is judged to be in the best interest of the township. C, the chief administrative officer shall assure that each employee's performance is reviewed annually by the respective department heads. The review shall at a minimum include determinations of dependability and quality and quantity of work. This review shall be made part of the employee's personnel file and shall be considered confidential information. D, all employees represented pursuant to a collective bargaining agreement when hired as a full-time employee of Upper Darby Township must either be or become within 6 months after their date of hiring and continue to remain during their employment a resident of Upper Darby Township. unless there is a specific provision in the employee's collective bargaining agreement modifying this requirement. There is an inconsistency clause, there's a severability clause, and that concludes the changes.
Great, thank you. Councilman Hafiz, please go ahead and turn your mic on. And if anyone else has a comment, please wave your hand or wave it via the image thing. Lisa, I see you. Okay, go ahead, Councilman Hafiz. Bob?
Thank you, Solicitor, for reading this and also referencing the history on this ordinance. I think when I'm looking at this, the way I'm reading it, it seems that this is just another attempt to give the residents of Upper Darby the best that they can get. Something I like about this is the education levels. Many positions in the township, it wasn't in the past, but they do require certain levels of education. And that only helps the residents of Upper Darby Township. If they have somebody that's qualified, who may have went to schooling for this, only serves them in the best way. I also think the probationary period, which is a standard in many industries of many different jobs across the nations in various organizations and industries, there's always a probationary period. This is also helping to serve the residents of Upper Darby. If we have someone that comes in and works for the township, we need to make sure that they're the right fit for us. They're going to bring in the best work ethic to help them aid the township. So that probational period is very important to identify if that person is a fit. So I think this ordinance is really designed to serve the residents the best way we can. And there are a lot of things that I was quite surprised that weren't in there. I'm not aware of what happened in August of 2019, but it's quite appalling that it was deleted entirely. That's really it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Lisa, go ahead and unmute yourself. I think you indicated you wanted to speak.
Yes. So I'm on section D of this ordinance. We're leaving out non-bargaining. So non-bargaining people, non-bargaining employees can live out of the township.
Correct.
Well,
And that's only department heads. The only people who are not represented by a union are department heads.
yes, but we had, I believe back in January, we were told that we were going to, that you needed to live, if you were voted in to this position, you had 6 months to move into the township. Now that's changing.
No, that was actually a reference to the administrative code, section 6.02, not realizing that in August, ordinance number 3059 had eliminated 60.2 in its entirety, i.e. removing the residency requirements. So when it was mentioned that you had to move into the township, it was also referenced to section 6.02 that technically no longer existed. So it was a misrepresentation and probably most likely just a misunderstanding.
So the solicitor, when he said that the new people that were elected had 6 months to move in, was going off an old code that he was reading that was left out.
I believe the reference to at the swearing in meeting of 6.02 was actually made by Councilman Bonnet. I don't believe it was made by Solicitor Kilkenny.
He
I didn't say
referred to the
anything at that meeting, I don't
administrative code
believe,
of section
very little.
602.
I don't believe Solicitor Kilkenny made any reference to the administrative code. Do you remember?
No, I didn't. I wouldn't have made it at that point. This was actually discovered by Miss Richardson from my office, who was actually looking at some of their issue, and Alexis sent it to her, and she sent it to me maybe a month or two ago, and said, "Hey, I think 602 is deleted," and I was surprised because that was not my understanding. And I read it a couple times, and yeah, it was deleted. And probably this is part of the problem is Upper Darby doesn't have a codification. I know that's being remedied, if something were codified, I think, I at least would have been able to review it and understand it. So until Ms. Richardson brought it to my attention, because that ordinance from last August was forwarded to her, I had no idea it was deleted. No. But I don't think I said anything on it either.
No. Bob and Don, I do see you. It's Lisa's turn. Just wanted to let you know, I did see your hands, and Matt's hand as well. So did you have anything else you had on that?
I said that I don't see that it wasn't changed.
So
So-
in ordinance,
In the minutes, it wasn't changed in the minutes from 1/6. It says, I have the minutes here. It says also Mr. Bonnet stated that there is a residency requirement for these positions. The solicitor referred to the Administrative Code Section 6.02, which states all persons other than police officers, paid firefighters hired as full-time employees of Upper Darby Township must either be or become within 6 months after the date of hiring and continue to remain doing during their employment of being a resident of Upper Darby Township. But nothing was ever changed in minutes after that.
well, we can't change the minutes. If things that are said at the meeting are technically incorrect, we can't go back and change the minutes. The minutes are representative of the meeting itself, regardless of whether or not what is said is true or not. So Councilman Bonnet had referenced the administrative code and 6.02, but in reality, 6.02 did not exist any longer because in August, when we passed ordinance number 3059, it deleted 6.02 in its entirety. So it didn't exist anymore. But somehow we missed that, and so therefore, when Councilman Bonnet had mentioned it, he may not have realized that it technically didn't exist anymore. So I can't change minutes I can't change what was said. I can only, we're trying to fix the mistake that was made so that we can continue forward.
Okay.
Okay. Tom, I see your hand, but you're farther down the list. So Bob, you're next.
Yeah, I think that section D should be modified slightly.
To what? You muted yourself. You gotta unmute yourself.
I'll start again.
Okay.
I think section D might want to be amended or maybe have another portion of it in there to accommodate the time period that Governor Wolf has suspended the ability to do real estate transactions. And it may happen again if the governor comes back to us again and he has to declare a state of emergency. To give us some more time or give the people additional time to settle and get into a place, a location necessary.
Well, as far as COVID-19, I think the mayor's state of emergency allows for those types of adjustments. But I mean, I'll pass it to the solicitor because we did make an adjustment to a previous ordinance because we were in a state of emergency in order to doing virtual meetings. So Sean, can you weigh in on, you got to turn on your mic, on whether or not we should add an emergency?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Great point. In reality, who is enforcing this ordinance? The person that would be enforcing this ordinance would be the mayor and the administration, I would believe. And they would probably put an employee on notice that, hey, you're out of requirement. We're at 6 months. You better move in within a month or get a lease, or we're going to have to get rid of you because you're in violation of the law. The other way to do it would be what's called filing a mandamus action in the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. So if someone thought the mayor was not enforcing the ordinance or the administration was not enforcing the ordinance, then someone can go ahead and file a suit and say, Upper Darby, follow your law. So those are the two ways it would happen. In reality, though, in a COVID-19 situation, where real estate sales were prohibited in the Commonwealth. I can't, I would see the mayor being lenient on related to that and give someone a grace period, as well as I'm not a judge, but I would also see the courts being very lenient on that because it couldn't happen in practicality. So.
Okay.
I agree. I just thought maybe there should be some language for it to allow
I
that
personally
flexibility.
don't think it's necessary. I think the people that were in charge of enforcing the ordinance would take that into account.
Thank you.
Mayor, would you like to weigh in on that? I know you were nodding. You got to unmute yourself. There you go.
No, I think that was a good point. It's up to the mayor and the administration to, it's up to the mayor to enforce the laws. And I think I can speak for myself, but I don't think anybody else operating under an emergency declaration would, hold the 6 months to, the letter of the law. So I'm in agreement with, I like Bob's point to include the language, but it might not be necessary. Like Sean, our attorney was saying, so.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so Bob, did you have anything else you wanted to add? No. Okay. So next is Don Bennett. Councilman Bennett, please go ahead and turn on your microphone. There you go.
Thank you, Laura. What is important here is that the record is accurately portrayed in Ordinance 3059, which was the ordinance that was adopted in this past August of 2019, August 21st to be specific. The new ordinance says, the proposed ordinance 3076 says that whereas council desires to reinstate provisions governing determination of merit and fitness for appointment, promotion, or demotion of the township employees, performance reviews, and residency requirements for township employees as has determined that maintaining such provisions in the administrative code is in the best interest. Well, that and the former whereas on August 21st, 2019, council enacted ordinance number 3059, which removes provisions governing determination of merit and fitness for appointment, promotion, and or demotion of township employees, performance reviews, and residency requirement for the township employees. Well, back to my point that the record and the ordinance has to accurately portray what has been adopted by council. The council did not remove those provisions by ordinance number 3059, although if one reads the new section then posted in 3059, section 602, it eliminates the letter A. If you go above that and you see whereas, and this is in ordinance 3059, whereas at the request of the Honorable Thomas N. McCosey, Mayor of Upper Darby Township, the Upper Darby Township Council Law and Government Committee has reviewed Article 6 of the Upper Darby Township Administrative Code and recommends amendments to be made to section 602A of the same. Therefore, and if you go back and check the tape of that meeting, and if you look at the agenda for that meeting, which specifically addresses only 602A, that would be amended. And if you go to the notes of testimony for the ordinance itself during the public hearing, and if you were to check the advertisement for ordinance 3059, I believe that it will corroborate that the only amendments that were made by ordinance 3059 were to section 6.02A. Therefore, the typographical error should not be overlooked as a typographical error. It must be considered in context of what was in fact approved. Be that as it may, and I think before we act on any ordinance of this sort, any ordinance 3076, we owe it to the rest of council, we owe it to the community to go back and verify the record, to corroborate if what I am saying is in fact true, which I believe it is. And if it is, then we have a whole different ordinance 3076 to consider, a whole different language. Regardless of all that, I would certainly hope that this council maintains the requirement for residency of employees at all levels. Now, I recognize that by virtue of arbitration in the past, we were directed to allow police officers and firefighters to live outside of the township. We can't control that. That was an order, that ordered by the arbitrators. But we do control every other employee in this township. So it's my strong desire and my strong recommendation and hope that this council would act to maintain residency of all employees other than police and fire for any position of any level, including directorships in this town.
Sean, would you like to respond?
I'll unmute myself. Sure. Yeah, I was not solicitor in August of 2019. I don't know what council's intent was. I see the whereas clause related to that, and it does say 602A. That being said, the whereas clause are legislative history, procedural history. What matters in ordinance drafting is after therefore clause in general, because that's what council ordains. And rather, if it was a scrivener's error or not, it needs to be corrected. That's all. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Don, you're good. Okay, so Matt, you're next. Matt, you're still muted. I can't hear you. You gotta unmute yourself.
Oh,
Matt.
sorry, I thought I did. Okay. Sorry about that. Yes, it's my recollection, but I believe 3059 was kind of reviewed pretty thoroughly at the time. I do remember quite a bit of discussion about it, but my understanding of the removal of that clause would basically be the logistical element of finding the best people for a job. Upper Darby has residents to 83,000 people, which is a huge number. Until you're looking for people with very specific skill sets who are looking for work, who are, that number diminishes quickly when you're looking for people in very specific skill sets. And when you are looking for department heads, you are not looking for people, you are looking for people with skills who are not gainfully employed, who would be ready to work for the township at whatever compensation the township sets up for them, which really is very limiting. Now, when you open that population up to the general region that could commute safely to Upper Darby on a daily basis, you're looking at changing 83,000 people to somewhere in the neighborhood of what, 6-7 million people. You're certainly opening yourself up to finding the most qualified applicants for the job. I understand the concept of a residency requirement. I understand that the thinking is that an IT specialist, say, would be more concerned with their job if they lived in said town. But I don't believe that any person who is passionate and skilled at any job would not do the job to their best of their ability because of their passion and their skill to their job. It seems a little archaic, and it also seems somewhat insulting to me, to Upper Darby Township, to think that someone who, say, lives in Springfield or someone who, say, lives in Broomall couldn't work here every day and take pride in this community as it is without having to have residents there. Again, we're looking for the best people to do the work of the township. And I think it's almost ridiculous to consider that mandating that someone leaves their home if their home is with, say, I don't know, a half hour, 30 minutes, or 15 minutes or whatever from this township to come to and from every day. Understand too that people's homes are their homes. They're set up the way they like them. They're set up for a lot of different things. If someone has a wife who is disabled, say, and they put an elevator on their staircase or something, they don't get that when they resell their home. That's an added burden that we don't compensate them for. We do not compensate for moving expenses. We do not compensate. We give very little to this residency requirement, except that we, I guess up until August, we demanded that people in these positions lived here. I think it's archaic and I don't think it's necessary. So kudos to my colleagues in the past in August who voted to repeal it. And I hope that we move forward with this new ordinance because I believe it is sound. And I think as Mr. Councilman Tunis said, it has a lot of good language in it. And I think it'll be helpful to all the residents of this township, making sure that the people that work here are the best ones for the job, not maybe necessarily geographically, but in a very real sense in merit. They'll be able to do the best job for our residents. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councilman Wagner, you're next.
Thank you. I have to tell you all that I don't believe we ever intended to abolish the residency requirement last August. Can you imagine the debate that would have generated? There was no such debate on that subject. I think Don Barnett is correct that the effect of the ordinance we passed at the time, or the amendment rather that we passed at the time, was much more limited than abolishing the residence requirement. I can tell you further that I don't think anybody thought we had abolished that requirement. And I know that because we had this very discussion with our current chief administrative officer. I believe he assured all of us that he would be moving into the township within 6 months. Why would he do that? And why would we ask him to do that if none of us thought that was a requirement anymore? And certainly I would strongly hope, and I imagine that he'll continue to abide by what he said and honor what he assured us, and he's not alone in that. This requirement would apply to others as well, all the department heads in particular. Further, I don't understand why in the world we would ever make this requirement of CBA members and not their own supervisors and bosses. How can we require the people who are in most of the jobs in the township to be residents and yet tell them that the people that are supervising them, they're not required to do that? I don't think that would sit very well. I don't think it would be very fair. And I don't think it's what we ever intended to do here. I also have another question about it. Maybe the solicitor can answer this. If I'm correct, the old language of the ordinance read in the first, this is the first 3 lines. At the end of the second line, and shall be free of personal, religious, racial, and political bias. And the way that you've now redrafted it, you took out the words "and political." Is there some intention that the township is going to be free to discriminate against people on the basis of their political views or political?
I would ask Council President Wentz, I believe, was the one who suggested that change. So I'll let her comment.
Yes, thank you. Actually, no, it's actually taking it a step further. It's to actually encompass the whole aspect of their voter status. We're not gonna, this administration, Upper Darby, will not discriminate against anyone for any aspect of their voter status, whether they're registered to vote, what party they're registered to, whether they vote in any election, all elections, whatever it is, but that in no way their voter status will ever weigh into any aspect of their employment within the township.
Okay, and I'm in support of that. And so then I'm wondering, why would we delete the words "and political"? Why would you keep them in there?
Well, because political only is saying that it's a reference to a political party. By saying voter status, then it's an all-inclusive, nonpartisan reference to all aspects. So it includes political parties, it includes whether they vote or not. It's an all-encompassing, and it's a nonpartisan approach to the same thing, and it's more inclusive to other aspects of voter status.
Okay, I must I hear you, but I think deleting those words makes the effect of this narrower, not broader. But in any event, that's my opinion. Anyway, I think we have and continue to have had all along a residence requirement for our employees. I think we should continue to do it. I trust that Mr. Rangione would certainly confirm that he told us all right at the beginning that he would be moving into the township within 6 months. And I think we should expect that not only of him, but of any and all of our department heads, as well as the rest of our employees. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, so to speak. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to clarify, prior to 3059, political affiliation was installed in ordinance number 3059. So prior to August of 2019, people were potentially in a situation to be discriminated against because of their political affiliation. So I just wanted to point out that that got added in, and voter status is really taking it the next step and broadening the protection of potential employees.
So it sounds like we're agreed that
Yes.
political
Yes.
affiliation is not a basis upon which a person could be discriminated against
Yes.
relative to their employment in Upper Darby Township.
Yes, it should not be a question in any shape or form when someone is applying for a job in our applications, in anything that we do. No one should ever ask about a potential employee's voter status in any shape or form. It should not be part of the conversation, which is part of the reason why it's part of the protective element.
So again, my request is the words "and political" then be returned in order to capture exactly what you're saying. But more than that, the residence requirement aspect, I've made myself clear on. So I hope this ordinance is going to be amended accordingly.
Is there any other council members that want to speak on this ordinance? Hold on, Don, you've already spoke. I just want to make sure there's no one else that wants to speak for the first time that hasn't already spoken. Anyone else wants to speak? Scott? Sorry, Scott.
Yep, hi. Just want to clarify a point that's been made about department heads being the only folks that this would affect. This would
Yes.
also affect, we have several other non-bargaining employees for the township. These are usually highly specialized professionals. Often they don't live in the township. They live somewhere else. They have a life. They have a spouse who has a job. They've got kids in schools. They are highly sought after personnel in a competitive marketplace where, quite frankly, public employment just doesn't compete. We can try our best. We have a pension plan. We have certain benefits. We have the satisfaction of public service. We can certainly, win people over on those merits. But what we've encountered when trying to recruit these folks, IT professionals, engineers, they're just not interested in moving for the amount of money that we're able to offer. And I think Councilor Silva's point about the number of people who currently live in the township who have these skills, who are looking for a job at any one time, it's very slim pickings. And when we have a key strategic need to fill like this, quite frankly, the only other option would be to go to consultants. And in both cases, it drives the cost up. So when we're negotiating with these folks, when we bring up the residency requirement, one thing we've heard time and again is that, well, we need more money. We need relocation assistance. If we're in a situation where we have a particularly skilled position and there's only a handful of people in the township who are even remotely qualified and have the certifications, well, then they can pretty much write their own ticket. And it puts us in a very disadvantageous bargaining position. And I would point out, we are going into a contract negotiation this year with one of our bargaining units that currently is held to the residency requirement. So if we're trying to provide the best value for the taxpayer, I think that loosening this restriction and giving us the ability to address it in collective bargaining definitely improves our position in terms of our ability to provide that value. The question of right, wrong, and preference is your domain, but just from a practical standpoint, it certainly makes it difficult to recruit the kind of talent that we need to make the kind of strategic things in IT and engineering and other specializations. I mean, we in fact have for many years been relying on outside engineers to do a lot of the work, where we've had an open civil engineer position in public works since, I think, 2015 or 2012. So it's not easy to fill these positions. And this enables us to be more flexible and more competitive.
Thank you. Councilwoman Phillips, go ahead.
Oh, hi. So I think that we should open it up, because if there are people out there that can benefit Upper Darby, and I agree with Councilman Silver, because I think people might come here because I think Upper Darby is a great place to work. It's a great place to live. And I agree, Scott, that, having a position open since 2012
Or 15.
or 15, that's, we need top talent. So if this can open it up and we can get the top talent that we need, I'm all in support of it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Councilman, so is there anyone else so Councilman Barnett and Councilman Hafiz, I have you on standby. Scott would like to speak again. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I just looked it up. It is 2016 since that position has been filled.
2016. Okay, so we've had an open engineer position since 2016, partially because of the residency requirement, perhaps. Okay, and Matt. Okay, so any other council members that want to speak that haven't already spoken? Okay, so next up is Councilman Barnett.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Scott, your point that there's a position open, it was my understanding it was intentionally left open because we did have 2 licensed engineers in our public works department up until the new administration. And both, one had retired a good many months before this current year, and one resigned shortly after the beginning of the year. So we now have none, but it was my understanding that we purposefully left that one position unfilled because we didn't find the need to fill it. But the point I was going to make on this residency issue is that it traditionally the 2 highest paid positions in Upper Darby, and they're well-paid positions, are the CAO and the Superintendent of Police. Traditionally, the Superintendent of Police. I can't say I'm acquainted with the salary of the acting director at present, the acting Superintendent of Police. Although I would not be at all disappointed if he were, held on board as a permanent. The point is, those 2 high positions should be residents of Upper Darby Township, and more than that, they should be taxpayers in Upper Darby Township. And there's nothing wrong with seeking potential workers from outside of the township, but with the proviso that they move in if they're offered and select and accept the position, particularly given the fact that they are pretty high paying salaries for the highest level positions. Mr. Rongione had already made the commitment, from what I understand, and acquiesced to the requirement that he would move in. So I don't know why that would have changed and what would make him disinterested in moving in. Would like to see him become a taxpayer in Upper Darby, given the salary as the highest paid employee in Upper Darby Township. So we can seek employment of people from outside the township. We just have to have the proviso that they become a resident and a taxpayer of Upper Darby. The best example I can give you of that having happened was Superintendent Chitwood. He was not a resident of Upper Darby, and he freely agreed to accept the position on the proviso that he become a resident. He did. He bought a house. He lived in Upper Darby Township, and he lives here, and although he did sell his property in later years, in recent years, as a matter of fact, but he did agree to move into Upper Darby Township. That's all I have to say.
Okay, next we have is the mayor. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can, yeah, there you go. Go ahead, Mayor.
I'm not sure that we should really get into who makes the most money, who lives here or not. Chief Chitwood got his house for $1 when he moved here. And he sold it for over $200,000 in 2017. So I don't think we really want to start this. I'm not sure that interim police chief Bernhardt lives here either. So we're trying to work on this ordinance. We're trying to straighten out a misunderstanding or a misprint or whatever happened with ordinance 3059. So that's what the focus should be here, not going through the roster of people that work here and may or may not live here or that kind of thing.
Thank you for the clarification. I agree. At this point in time, Councilman Hafiz, go ahead. Turn your mic on. Hold on. There you go.
Okay, yeah, it seems like a lot of the boroughs and townships within the county don't limit their job pool. So I don't understand why we would limit our job pool. I know it's interesting to make this about one person, but that's not what this before is really is about. Section D gives us a pool, and then also my fear of the requirement is that it can lead to corruption, where people can't be, certain department heads can't be impartial because they do live there and they are part of the township, and something they're implementing affects their neighborhood. So it creates a lot of gray areas. And in the past, we've seen common last names running the township, common last names being department heads and in various positions. And I think that opens this up so we can prevent that from happening. Because as we can see in the current state of the township, I don't know if that was the best idea.
Thank you. And then Councilman Silva. Go ahead.
Yes, well, two things. So to the mayor's point, I don't see how we should make this personal. I do remember having Mr. Rongione as a neighbor, and he was a wonderful neighbor, and I would love to have him as a neighbor again. But really, that's not really what the point of this is about. The point of this is about finding the most qualified people to best serve the township. And actually, I really only wanted to speak to the voter status point versus political affiliation. Political affiliation, I think voter status is a better term. Voter status, I've been asked in other instances for jobs that I've had, how I was registered, not by anyone in Upper Darby Township, but I find that disheartening. I find it a little disgusting, to be honest with you. People should be allowed to work here, whether or not they are registered to vote, whether or not they do vote, whether or not they work a poll or don't work a poll or whatever. And I feel like voter status, as Council President Wentz said, better covers the whole gamut than the term political affiliation. Political affiliation is not, I don't think it's quite as big an umbrella. So I think it's very important that we include that, because I don't think it should be necessary for township employees to do anything for or against anyone on election day. I don't feel like they should, and I'm not saying they do or they don't, but I'm saying that I think it's important in this language that it includes it, because however you're registered, whether or not you vote, how you vote, what you do aside from voting, that is your business. That the only concern I would have is if anyone does anything that would interfere with the township doing their business, whether anything to sharing something that may impact confidentiality or something like that, then that's clearly that beyond that. But I think voter status kind of covers the gamut of what's most important as far as the discrimination issue. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman Faralia, did you want to add something? I wasn't sure if you had waved or not, so.
No, I'm good.
Okay, I just wanted to check in with you. Great, thank you. So, well, we had a lot of discussion for and against this ordinance. I believe that,
Mr. Burnett,
well, everyone has spoken. Councilman Burnett, you've spoken twice already. So I did a little research on Robert's Rules of Order. I guess I should have clarified that in the beginning, was that, it says that everyone needs to have the opportunity to speak twice within on any issue. So that was kind of what I was going on. I guess I should have clarified that. So, but since I did not clarify that in the beginning, Councilman Burnett, was there something else you wanted to add to the discussion?
Yes, as I sit here, and probably others have the same experience, I'm constantly getting text messages from people reacting to what's happening at our meeting. And I only pay attention a little bit to some of them, but one responded to what Mayor Keffer said about Chitwood purchasing a house for $1 and said that is absolutely not true. I can only repeat what I'm reading, and it's from a person that I have a lot of regard for. I guess that can be researched. I don't intend to research it, but it's told to me that is not at all true that he paid $1 for his house. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so in reference to getting messages, yes, I did get messages while we were discussing, as I'm sure everyone has. So that's the reality. We all get messages, to give us tidbits of information. I do agree with the mayor as far as the reality, the focus on, I agree with the mayor as well as what Scott had said. And other council members as far as the need to stay focused on the intent of ordinance number 3076 to give us opportunity to bring in the most qualified, skilled employees to fill the vacancies that we have in our township. And I believe that this ordinance does allow for that. So the question really goes back to Councilwoman Billups. This is, our plan is to move this ordinance forward. Do you want to turn your mic on since you are the chair of this committee? And I believe all members of this committee supports this ordinance. Is that fair to say? We didn't hear from Councilwoman Blackwell, but she did a lot of nodding when Councilman Silva and Councilwoman Billups and Hafiz had spoken. So, and she's nodding away now in agreement. So, Councilwoman Billups, are you good with moving this ordinance onto the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. And then our next ordinance for the Law, Government, Rules and Procedures Committee is ordinance number 3077. And if Councilor Richardson can give us a brief on the next ordinance.
Solicitor, Madam President.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you.
What did I say?
You said a council person.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, solicitor. Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 3077 is an ordinance amending the Upper Darby Township Administrative Code to remove the requirement that the Director of Public Works must be a registered civil engineer and to remove provisions requiring the Director of Public Works serve as the township engineer, repealing all inconsistent ordinances, parts thereof, providing a severability clause, and providing an effective date. So for clarity, and this is provided in the whereas clauses, there are provisions in the administrative code which require that the Director of Public Works be a registered civil engineer. And the council has determined that the role of township engineer should be served by a third-party registered professional engineer or a firm, and that has been done. So as a result, now therefore Upper Darby Township hereby ordains Section 5.24 of the Upper Darby Administrative Code is amended as follows. The Department of Public Works shall be headed by a director who shall be responsible to the mayor and chief administrative officer for the performance of the function of the department. The section regarding who shall be a registered civil engineer has been struck. Section 5.25A, Upper Darby Administrative Code is amended as follows. At the direction of the mayor or chief administrative officer, provide for the engineering service for the township, period. It's been stricken that as the township engineer. There's a inconsistency clause, also a severability clause, and an effective date. So ends the reading.
Great, thank you. Are there any council members that want to weigh in on this? Okay, Don, I see you. Go ahead. You need to unmute yourself first. You need to there you go. There you are. You're muted again. Hold on. You got to unmute yourself again. Something happened. There you go.
There we go. Thank you. Just a couple questions. Has again, this is not an uncommon way for municipalities to engage professional engineering services. I'm certainly on board with that. Has the township administration been in conversation? I have a couple questions. Has the township administration been in conversation with any engineers to fill that role?
Who wants to answer? Scott, do you want to answer, or Vince? Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with people.
You're not prepared to identify?
It's a public meeting, Don. It's a personnel matter.
To hire a contract, basically a contractor, or is this an individual?
Oh, I thought you meant on staff.
No, I'm talking about it. The way it reads, it has to be either a third party or a firm. So neither would be, as I interpret that language, neither would be an employee of the township. So
I thought the language was just clarifying that the director need not be an engineer. So the director could be an engineer, the assistant director could be an engineer, the director could be an engineer, one of the building inspectors could be an engineer, but it wasn't, all it was saying was that it wasn't required that the director specifically be.
No, but I'm not referring to director. It says, whereas council has determined that the role of township engineer should be served by a third-party registered professional engineer or a firm of registered professional engineers. And they're the groups that the individuals or groups that I'm referring to that we would have to hire out as outsiders, again, which is very common for a municipality to do this. And I was just curious, as one of my questions, has the administration been in conversation with any third-party individual professional engineers or a firm of professional engineers? And just I'll ask my second question. And if not, what will be the process of engaging them?
I believe Mayor wanted to weigh in. Mayor, go ahead and turn on your mic. You can turn on your mic. There you go.
Yes, we have been in contact with individual engineers and firms. We recently became members of PenBid, and we put out an RFP for a specific, for a geotech job that's related to a problem that we're having in the second district. And regarding, who should lead the department, the Public Works Department, there's several divisions in there. And I think we need the flexibility to, we have sewer, we have vehicle maintenance, sanitation, part of the Parks Department is in there, the Highway Department, signs and painting. So I think we need the flexibility to hire somebody who might not be an engineer, but would be a good operations manager.
No, I respect that. I'm just referring specifically to the role of township engineer as it's drafted in this ordinance. This proposed ordinance says the council has determined, if this is adopted, council has determined that the role of township engineer should be served by a third-party registered professional engineer or a firm of registered professional engineers. So we're not suggesting that that is the director. That's a wholly different person. We're suggesting here that we're going to hire either a registered professional engineer as an individual to act as township engineer as a third party, or a firm to act as the township engineer and represent us. And by the way, geotech would not normally serve in that capacity. They more address soils conditions and subsurface conditions, a little bit different than what a conventional civil engineer would do.
And yeah, I think this gives us the flexibility to hire an engineer that we need for specific projects that we're working on, like the tech one, or someone that specializes in stormwater management, or the kind of things for land development. And previously, the administration had also, hired different engineers for different jobs like that as well. So
have we identified anyone that to fill that capacity as township engineer?
We just, I'm not reading it the same way that you are, I guess.
Well, apparently we have to designate the role of township engineer. It's saying that. If that's not the intention, perhaps the language should change, but it's simply saying that the council has determined that the role of township engineer should be a third-party registered professional engineer or a firm of registered professional engineers. So there is a position, I believe it's a requirement. It may be in the Home Rule Charter or the Administrative Code, but it appears to be a requirement that we hire a township engineer. And I just was curious to learn if we've identified anybody to fill that position.
So
as a third party or
another outcome of bringing on the OPEIU is that the assistant public works director must be a civil engineer. So
I didn't see that written anywhere, but that's good. If
it's
that's
in the
case,
job,
that's-
Allison Lee's we're not supposed to talk about, but that's written into the OPEIU currently.
Okay, all right, I accept that.
Vince,
I'm not aware of that, but I accept that if that's what you're saying. But again, what is the process for hiring an engineer for a specific task if we have a specific project? How are we going to go about that?
Yeah, so just as a point of clarification, and as was discussed with the previous ordinance, and as is sort of generally well known by people who have served on these bodies for years, the whereas clauses don't carry the force of law. So the whereas clause doesn't create a requirement. So it is possible that that language could be changed because it might give the wrong impression. But the whereas clause doesn't create a requirement, doesn't actually have the force of law. So it's not saying that there will be a third party necessarily engaged, that requirement is not being created here. So that's point one. And point two is the administration has already established a process of putting things out to bid, using pen bid, using an RFP process to procure professional services and make large capital acquisitions, et cetera. And that's the process that would be used going forward.
Yeah, well, again, maybe we should reconsider the language because it says the council has determined. That's pretty specific to me, that if we adopt this, that we will have determined that there is a role for a township engineer and it has to be filled. So anyhow, enough said. I would suggest that maybe that language be revised a bit.
Okay.
Well, I guess I would ask the solicitors, do the whereas clauses carry the force of law?
Whichever one wants to reply.
No, they don't. We can look. They don't.
Thank you.
Councilman Silva? Go ahead.
Yes, I don't know, it's kind of almost as a point of order. I believe this ordinance is talking about the director of public works and not specifically about a township engineer. While I sort of understand the dang, I can't think of the word now, but anyway, while I do sort of understand the argument, I do sort of
You
wonder,
think they
and I
don't know
also
what they're
think
doing?
too, as
You think they
I'm
don't know what
sorry,
they're doing?
no, I'm sorry, was I
Councilman Bennett,
completed?
you don't
believe
have
this
the
was
floor.
happened before.
Councilman Silva has the floor. Please do not speak over another council member. And mute your mic when you're no longer have the mic. Go ahead, Councilman Silva.
Sure.
Mhm.
My understanding of engineering profession also is that it's engineering. An engineer is often a very specific. So someone who say is an engineer like for buildings or mechanical functions of buildings or whatever would be different from someone who would be erosion or environmental concerns or soil issues. So I do understand the logic of the township bringing in a specific person when they need them to perform a specific task, as opposed to having one person. And I believe in the past that was probably done anyway. I seriously doubt that even if the Department of Public Works was headed by a director who was an engineer, I have to assume that when something was outside their area of expertise, somebody would be brought in that was in that area of expertise when it was necessary, because it was necessary. That would just seem to make the most sense. I mean, I know in the maritime industry, that's usually how things are done. And I assume that in this industry, that's how things are done as well. And I just feel like that removing this restriction from the administrative code is an important way for the township to fill important roles that need to be filled. I know that not having a director of public works creates a lot of it seems like it creates like a bit of a speed bump for other projects. And to have somebody who can administer public works as a director is probably a little more important than having someone who is an engineer, even if that specific engineering concern is not always necessary. And if 9 times out of 10, it seems like we would have to bring in somebody in that speciality anyway, because the issues that come up are in such a varied, require such a varied expertise. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any council members that want to weigh in on this ordinance? Scott, you were nodding your head. Did you want to weigh in as, okay, you're all good. Great. I just wanted to check. Okay, so I'm seeing no one else indicating that they want to speak on ordinance number 3077. So, sorry, going back to, so Councilwoman Billups, I believe I did see Councilwoman Blackwell also nodding while Councilman Silva was speaking. So I think that's able to confirm that all your members of your committee do support ordinance number 3077. Would you like to move this ordinance forward?
Yes.
Awesome. And then would you, and then you have another ordinance. So we have ordinance number 3078, and if Solicitor Richardson could give us a brief, because my tongue is tied, that would be most excellent.
Thank you, Ms. President. So ordinance 3078 is a ordinance which is converting the electrical department to the electrical division and placing it under the Department of Public Works. It's the administrative code, which for clarity was enacted in 1971, had a distinct electrical department. And it was responsible for installing and maintaining electric and traffic signals in the township. However, the mayor and the chief administrative officer have recommended that the electrical department be converted into electrical division and then placed under public works, where it seems to make the most sense in terms of the nature and the function of the operations. So as as a result, in terms of the ordinance itself, Upper Darby Township hereby ordains. So of this, the administrative code sections 5.32 and 5.34 through 5.34, inclusive of the Upper Darby Administrative Code, are hereby deleted in their entirety, labeled intentionally left blank. Section 5.25 of the Upper Darby Administrative Code is amended to add a new subsection J as follows. J, direct and administer an electrical division, which shall be responsible for installing and maintaining electrical and traffic signalization equipment in or on township-owned property or property for which the township is responsible. The electrical division shall, 1, install and maintain traffic control signals and flashing warning devices. 2, install and maintain the electrical lighting, street lighting, appliances, and equipment in all township facilities. And 3, cooperate with other departments and governmental agencies to accomplish 1 and 2 above. There is an inconsistency clause, a severability clause, and effective date. So ends the reading.
Thank you. I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Great, thank you. So are there any council members that want to weigh in on ordinance number 3078? I see Councilman Silva. Councilman Silva, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say I think this is great. I think it helps streamline. It removes some dang, I'm having trouble with words today, but yeah, I think this helps streamline our government by decreasing to like one directorship that's not necessary and trying to combine that into another directorship that already would kind of encompass it anyhow. So moving the electrical department into the electrical division helps save the township money, I guess, at the end of the day. And I think that's and that's provided we can do that without removing service to our residents. I think that's a wise move.
Thank you. Are there any other council members that would like to speak on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none. Councilwoman Phillips and Councilwoman Blackwell, do you agree with Councilman Silva? Do you support this ordinance?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So since the committee is in support, Councilwoman Phillips, are you prepared to move this ordinance forward to the next meeting?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Great. And then do you want to just check with your committee on any other issues they want to bring to?
Does anyone else on the committee has any anything else?
No, Councilwoman. It's fine.
Anyone from council?
I do want to throw in that to council members, 2 social media related ordinances did go out to you prior to this meeting. There were still there were some concerns that this committee had on those ordinances. So if you received the ordinances earlier, if you have any questions and concerns on any of them, please send them to Councilwoman Phillips. The committee will be meeting on it to hopefully be able to bring it forward in the June committee meeting. So I just wanted to give you the heads up because you received them and then they didn't appear on the agenda. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Council President. Anybody else from council? Councilman Siddiq, unmute yourself.
Siddiq,
There you go. Yes, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the electric department head post will be Laminate, right? Laminate, and then he's going to work under Public Works.
Correct.
Yeah.
It would become an electrical division.
Yes.
Under Public Works.
Okay, we can.
The Public Works Director would also be the electrical division director.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else from council?
No.
Nope.
Great.
Okay, seeing none. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Okay, next up, we have Municipal Services Licensing and Public Works Committee. Councilman Burke is the chairman. Members are Councilman Siddiq, Councilman Wagner. Yes. And actually, I made a mistake when I sent out, when I gave Alexis this agenda. Councilman Hafiz is still on this committee as well. So that was my mistake for omitting him. My bad. So just wanted to let you know that he's still on this committee. So Councilman Burt, go ahead.
I don't have anything to bring up tonight. Does anyone on the committee have anything?
Councilman Siddiq, go ahead.
Yeah, since it's a municipal services, so we have any tentative or any thinking about how to open, when you're going to open the building door, township?
Mayor, did you want to, or Vince, did you want to weigh in on that? Go ahead, Mayor.
Well, Delaware County is still in the red zone, according to the governor. We're waiting for directives from Harrisburg, really, in terms of opening up the building to the public. So it looks, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But when things change, then we'll get the word out. But as of now, I can't say at all.
So we as a township cannot decide anything, right?
Right.
I'm not prepared to do that, no. Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, I mean, until the governor takes us off of a red zone listing, we're still in lockdown from the governor. So until they move the county to a non-red state of existence, right? We have to go with lockdown mode. Is that correct, Vince? You're nodding
Yeah,
your
I
head.
believe that's correct. And I think if anything, we could go longer, but not shorter. Meaning if we felt the situation was worse in Upper Darby, we could extend beyond when the county or the state relaxed, but we couldn't relax before they relaxed, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm not saying that we have a plan to do that. I'm just explaining the possibility of how the structure works.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Councilman Burke.
Council, have anything to add?
I don't see anybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, great. And then next up, we have the Finance and Appropriations Committee. Councilman Gwynn is chairman and council members Phillips and Burke are members. And we have a report from our treasurer, David Heyman. Council members, I did email it to you just before we started the meeting or before we started our executive session. So go ahead, David, go ahead and unmute yourself. You should be unmute yourself. There you go. Floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Council President. The report you received is my attempt to create another tool for the administration to use as it tries to navigate its way through these treacherous waters and get us through this year in a fiscally sound mode. So my model, and again, it's a draft, it's got some issues with it, I recognize, but we can work those out. But the idea was to take two models, one a statistical based model and the other to look at the budget on a line by line basis to determine a high and a low estimate, a range of from this point looking forward where we might fall. And it's quite a range. It's about a $9 million difference. What this requires is to go back to the people who know better, certainly better than I do, about the discussions that are going on in the township building and the decisions that are being made. But ideally, to get this, if we get this tool in order, what it will be able to do is we plug different assumptions into it to give us what the incremental changes would be, both on a revenue and an expense perspective, in helping make those difficult decisions. And so that's what you've seen. I thought it was very interesting in that we don't have a lot of data points, but I wanted to look at what how Upper Darby's revenues performed under financial crisis. I have data on 2 financial crises. That was the .com bust and the recession in 2001. And again, the Great Recession, and where Upper Darby's revenues have really no relationship whatsoever in a normal economy. When you focus on those recessions, we are about 52% correlated to the recession itself in terms of a downturn in revenues. And when I went in and kind of made some calculations, I came up with about a potential hit of about $7 million against revenue. Just on a statistical basis, has nothing to do with looking at a line item, but that looked to me like what we might suffer, so that's where that is. On the other side, on the line by line cash flow, which I'm a lot weaker at, because again, to do a line by line, a good estimate, you have to understand the decisions that are being made, and I necessarily am not involved with that. I'm not supposed to be. So I'll be leaning on CAO Rangione to help with that. But that's what this report's about. And like I said, it's a starting point. The idea is, as we go through the year, as we put actual experience behind us on a month-to-month basis, this thing will tighten up and be a little more reliable. Ideally, the reason that I am in this position right now and doing this is to try to help define how the Upper Darby treasurer can make a positive contribution. And I think if we get a nice model going that's a reliable tool for the future, that would be one contribution. So with that, come at me.
Great, thank you. And in the future committee meetings, I think we'll end up having work it out to have your report on a shared screen so that the residents can, that everyone can see it. It's just we weren't, I was not savvy enough to have that up and running in time for this meeting. So, but we will look to do that in the future. And I realized that, for council, we all got it just as we were entering into an executive session. So I'm not sure if council members, if you have any questions on this report, please feel free to let me know by a wave of your hand or whatever. Anyone? Go ahead, Vince, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think Treasurer Heyman has done a really excellent job and has been really helpful to the CAO and the Director of Finance and really all the department heads as we've tried to piece this thing together. Very uncertain times, very difficult to compare last year's revenue to this year's revenue, not only because of the virus, but because of the extended deadlines, right? We extended the discount period on the taxes, then we extended the flat rate on the property taxes, and we extended the deadline on the business privilege taxes. So it's very difficult to compare the revenues, and yeah, I just wanted to say I think the treasurer has really done a good job under very difficult circumstances.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's good to hear how the treasurer is able to work with you and the administration. That's really helpful. So, and then I'm sorry, I'm just seeing, we haven't heard from Councilman Burke in a while, so let's hear from Councilman Burke, and then Councilman Silva will be next. Go ahead, Councilman Burke.
Thanks, Laura. Can I make a comment on some of the department expenditures that we received?
From the green bar?
Yes, or would that be for another time?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. In the Department of 410, our fire truck repairs, looks like we only have about $5,000 left. I thought we did something a couple months ago, that we removed some money from the volunteer contributions. I don't see a line item for that, or I don't know if Vince can answer that.
I don't remember removing anything from the volunteers. We did attempt to sell 2 trucks, but I don't know if those trucks got sold, but I don't remember removing anything from the volunteer firefighter side, but Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't a council reallocation. It was done at the administrative level in the department. Some of the funds allocated for the volunteer allotment were designated for vehicle repair. So I believe that's what Councilman Burke is referring to. And it hasn't been happening for very long. So that money hasn't accumulated significantly. And it's possible that it's in the general account as opposed to in the repair line in that report.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just looking at the, only having $5,000 left and being in the month of May. Are we just going to track it that we'd have, we're pulling it from the general account, or we're putting another line item in?
Yeah, I think it's a decision to be made in consultation with the finance committee, exactly how we want to handle it. I mean, this budget and these line items were created, by the previous council and previous administration. So I think it's an ongoing effort by the new council and the new administration to make a decision like that.
And one more thing. I see the encumbered balance on the April 30, 2020 capital budget report. I see we have $1.6 million, 1.635 million. We have fire trucks at 1.7. There's $64,000. We have a truck coming in. What is the actual amount on the truck? Are we okay with the $1 million that we have set aside?
Yeah. So just to be clear, I'm not sure I was clear on the last question. Those funds are in the general fire line still. They just haven't been transferred to the repair line this month. And then on the truck, yes, I don't have the invoice in front of me, but in the last week or so, the director of finance and I were in communication with the fire chief about the actual invoice price of the truck. So we will, it will be close, but there is enough money in the capital fire budget for that truck.
Yeah, I don't think I saw 2 months ago. I'm not sure if we had spent the $64,286. I was trying to figure out what that went to.
Well, we also made the move to encumber that roughly $1 million for that exact reason, so that money wouldn't be touched before the truck's delivery date.
Okay, that's probably $1 million truck then.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely, it's slightly over $1 million, 1 million, I don't know, 65,000 or something. I don't remember exactly.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, and then Councilman Silva, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question for Treasurer Heyman. Looking over your report there, so you're saying that during the recessions in 2001 and 2008 that we experienced a loss of 7% of anticipated revenue. Is that overall? Is that like the residential property tax or municipal, like mercantile taxes, or is that against the economy's
Yeah, what I measured
fluidity at the
against,
time?
I measured against GDP. Say how in the national economy, how that goes, so goes our revenues. And I did find there was they used a statistical measure called a correlation coefficient for those years. And again, we don't have a lot of data points, and that's the problem. But it seemed to be that it was about 3.5. The standard deviation that I used was about 3.5, and in a recession I use a 2 times standard deviation event, which gave me about a 7 to 8% downside on that revenue. And then so I took that 7 and I took that it was actually 8.75, multiplied that by our revenues, and that's what the number came out to be.
Okay, so that's already comparing to the dip that would have been in GDP during those 2 recessions at that time.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got that's right.
Okay, so, and since, I mean, we're not, it seems like this year, this crisis now is kind of a little unprecedented, but we should recognize it will probably dip slightly below what GDP dip is again.
Well, we want to be careful because as CAO Rangioni said, the problem with making these projections now is because some deadlines were moved. So using even a year over year, comparing 2019 to 2020, it's not an apple-to-apple comparison because deadlines for paying the taxes haven't actually been met yet. Those deadlines haven't come up yet. I'm looking at the revenue collection, and they actually don't look that bad, given the fact that we moved some deadlines out. So that's kind of hard to predict. That's why I needed a statistical measure that said generally this is what happens in this township, and that could happen to us this year. And so that's my downside estimate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other council members? Tom, was that a wave? Councilman Wagner? Yes. Okay, go ahead, Councilman Wagner.
Thank you. Just briefly, I want to say clearly that I applaud and support the decision by the mayor and the administration to enact the extensions that they did. I think that was the right thing to do. I think our residents needed it and appreciate that. I'm going to predict that there may be pressure coming from various sources to do it again. And I would just ask the administration to be thinking about that. Maybe you already are. I don't mean to presume, but it wouldn't surprise me if the township gets pressure to do the same thing again. And there's going to come a point in time, of course, when the township can't do that any longer, even though it wants to. So that's just a comment by me. If there is already that pressure, I'd be interested in knowing about it. But mostly that was just a comment on my part. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, go ahead.
So Councilman Wagner, we haven't had a lot of pressure yet to change any of the deadlines that we've moved forward. One deadline we haven't moved at all is the sewer and trash fees. They're still due at the end of May. The margins we work off of, especially with the sewer fund, we can't move it. The expenses with payroll and what we pay to the 3 sewer authorities that we use. So that one is set. The flat rate goes to June 30th, but we haven't, I don't know, CAO Rangioni, have you gotten any pressure?
No, not really. I mean, a passing comment here or there or email, but not anything that I would say is significant or constant at this stage.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Wagner, did you have anything else, or that was it? You're good?
Good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other council members that wanted to ask our treasurer any questions or concerns? No? Okay, so seeing none, heading back to looking at my agenda. Great. Thank you, Treasurer Heyman, for taking part. We did have John McMullen on the agenda, but I realized that he's not actually here. Vince, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything on his behalf or you wanted to just move forward. Vince, go ahead.
No, that was actually my mistake. I had thought that these resolutions coming up were pertaining to John, but they're not. The abatement schedule was actually passed last month, and that was proposed by John and worked on by John. So
Okay.
I apologize, John. John is not absent in any way. He was not required to be here.
Okay, that's cool. I just wasn't sure. I just wanted to cover all the bases.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's my fault.
All good. Great. So at this point in time, can we get Solicitor Richardson to give us a brief on Resolution 16-20?
Thank you, Madam President. Resolution 1620 is related to the Property Maintenance Code. Chapter 7 of the code governs fire safety requirements, which includes the minimum conditions and standards for fire safety relating to structures and exterior premises. That being said, the fire chief or any of his designees shall make an annual fire safety inspection of each commercial property. And there is a charge associated with the inspection. So now therefore be it hereby resolved by Upper Darby Township Council and is hereby adopted and resolved by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1, the following fees are hereby established for fire safety inspections in accordance with Chapter 7 of the Upper Darby Township Property Maintenance Code. The fee for inspection of a commercial property less than 1,000 square feet shall be $150. The fee for inspection of a commercial property of 100 square feet or more, but less than 2,001 square feet shall be $250. The fee for inspection of a commercial property of 2,001 square feet or more shall be $250 for the first 2,000 square feet and $25 for each additional 1,000 square feet. There's repealer and a severability clause and an effective immediately section. So ends the reading.
Thank you. Are there any council members that have any questions or concerns on Resolution 16-20? Councilman Gwynn, go ahead. You got to turn off your mic. You got to turn on your mic. Go ahead. Your mic, you gotta do your mic again. For some reason, it went off.
Showing
Go ahead.
on.
Yep, it is now.
Okay. I just had some minor ones. It references chapter, and I think that was the language we'd used in the previous rendition of the property code, but it was in fact sections. And also down C, we're missing the word B for the total. B for inspection of commercial properties, 2,001 square feet or more shall be $250.
Okay, we can adjust that. Just for clarification, Councilman Gwen, what if you look in the property maintenance code, all the fire codes is actually set up in chapter 7. Section 705 actually deals with the inspections, and that was one of the new sections that's listed in the beginning of the property maintenance code.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
The other question I had was, will there be a separate type of resolution for multifamily dwellings? Were they handled separately, or how is that going to be treated?
I'm going to defer to Mr. McSween on that.
Can Chris come back into the equation? There you are. Go ahead and unmute yourself and go forth. There you are. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so in terms of separate resolution, I believe we have another fee schedule as it pertains to rentals. So that's something that has been established.
Okay,
So there will be another resolution that will come our way. Is
thank
what
you.
you're saying?
Yes, there will.
Okay.
Thank you. That's
And
all
easy.
that I had. Anybody else in the committee have anything?
Councilman Bonnet is on my list to speak next. So Councilman Bonnet, go ahead.
Thank you. How do we establish these fees for inspection?
Chris, would you like to answer?
These fees were reviewed in conjunction with fees of neighboring municipalities, just looking over where we were and where they are and how long we haven't made changes. So it was time that we thought we'd bring it up to a point that was conducive to everyone else, not more, not less, but definitely, somewhat down the middle.
So, Chris, you're suggesting then there's some communities that actually charge more than we do. We will charge.
Yes.
All right. My only concern, therefore, is that we may want to give some thought to when we start enforcing this, given the fact that a lot of businesses are shut down at the present and hitting them with expenses. And you might say, well, these aren't big expenses for a business, but when a business has been effectively out of business for a period of time, for weeks now, and possibly for months, particularly restaurants that will probably remain out of business for many months to come, as far as being able to open at least to serve an in-house menu. I know a number of them are doing takeout, but I just ask that the administration consider perhaps forestalling enforcement of this ordinance if it is adopted for a period of months and wait until well after the COVID-19 issue has been resolved and businesses are back in full functioning capacity again. So it's just something that I would like and ask that the administration give some thought and consideration to.
Thank you. I think that is actually saying that is definitely in their radar for all ordinances and resolutions that we're working on. But I believe Solicitor Kilkenny wanted to weigh in. Go ahead.
Hold on one second. I was doing something else. Answering CO's question. Real quick.
Yep. Where'd he go? He disappeared. Okay.
Battery died probably.
Oh, okay. So we will get back to the solicitor when he returns to us. Councilman Silva, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilman Silva.
Yeah, I do understand. I believe what Councilman Bonnet is saying. I don't know. Fire safety is fire safety. I would hate to survive a pandemic and then die in a burning building. So, but that all being said, I hope the township does take that into some consideration. But I don't believe that we should forego our duty to make sure our residents are eating and retailing in safe establishments. So I think it's important to move forward. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Matt. Don, I see your hand, and I'm bringing Sean back into the equation because I know Sean had something he wanted to say. So Sean, go for it.
Yeah, real quick, and I'm sorry for that. There was a little technical issue with my Wi-Fi. So on the, as was brought up by Mr. McSween, what the administration always has to do
is make sure that the fees approximate the cost of implementation of providing that fee, or else it's an illegal tax. So the test should really not be what the municipalities, what Lansdowne charges or Springfield or Haverford charges. The test should be what it costs Upper Darby to implement that inspection. So just want to be clear.
Thank you. So when you say costs, as far as what it would cost for the code enforcer to go out to that building to inspect, the time it costs for the employee to go out
Self-insurance,
and
things like that has to be all factored in. Yeah.
right. And then everything else that happens from that point forward.
Yes.
Right. And do we have an idea of what the costs were or what the fees were for these inspections in the past?
I don't. You'd have to ask Mr. McSween or Mr. McCann.
Okay. I seem to lost people.
Hello.
Oh, there you are. Go for it.
I don't currently have that with me.
Okay.
But that's something I can produce later.
Okay. Thank you. Just to have an idea of comparison would be nice. Thank you. And then Don had one more, but before we got to Don, is there anyone else that wanted to comment on this resolution? Okay, Don, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that we do not enforce fire codes. I think that's very important. I agree with Matt on that, but enforcing or assessing the fees, which I think in many cases right now, we don't assess fees for certain inspections. So the fact is that we do, and it is important that we maintain fire safety. But again, I think we need to be somewhat compassionate when assessing new fees for these inspections. And hopefully we can forestall those assessments until we get through the pandemic and businesses are reestablished.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing none. Sorry, I'm freezing for a moment. So Michelle and Brian are on your committee. Do you guys support the moving of this resolution? Does your, is that a nod of yes from Councilwoman Phillips?
Yes.
Okay.
Laura.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Bob, are you cool with moving this resolution to the agenda of the next meeting? You gotta turn your mic on, Bob. Bob, your mic. There you go.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Pending the additions, the typos and things like that. 'Cause we're minor.
Okay. Great. Wonderful. Okay, so then our next is resolution.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just real quick, just want to make it clear, the CEO raised a point to me. Obviously, these resolutions coincide with the adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code if it's adopted. So what we'll do is resolutions would be staggered, would be adopted effective if the International Property Maintenance Code is adopted. We'll just change the effective date of these ordinances to reflect that, these resolutions to reflect that. Just
Yes.
to be, okay?
Yes, they are connected to that ordinance and yes,
Yeah.
I gotcha. Thank you. So then next up, we have resolution number 17-20. And if Solicitor Richardson could give us a brief, that would be excellent.
Thank you. This is resolution 1720 is a resolution of the Upper Darby Township Council. This is establishing the fines for the property maintenance violations. That being said, The hereby fines are established for violations of the code and any other ordinances regulating regulating property maintenance in Upper Darby Township. The fee for the first violation of the code shall be enforced by the issuance of a ticket noting the violation and shall be a fine of $25. The penalty for the second violation, it shall be a fine of $200. The penalty for a third violation of the code shall be a fine of $500. The penalty for the fourth and subsequent violations of the code shall be a fine of $1,000. Each day that a violation of the code continues shall constitute a separate offense. Each section of the code that is violated shall constitute a separate offense. And Upper Darby shall be entitled to recover the cost of prosecution of any violation of the code and actual attorney's fees incurred by the township for prosecution of any violation of the code. There's a repealer, severability clause, and effective immediately. But to Solicitor Kilkenny's point, this would be this would coincide with the passage of the ordinance of the property maintenance code. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, are there any council members that would like to weigh in on Resolution 17-20? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Is it possible to get a clarification of, in the past, what was the fee for someone going in to do an inspection previously?
Chris?
On the first, for a fire inspection? Anybody? Chris, if you want to weigh in, or Vince, go ahead. Go ahead, Vince.
Oh, you're asking about the previous fire inspection fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no fee.
Okay. So we're putting in a fee just so that we can actually start to recover some of the costs of the inspections.
Yeah, absolutely. So the staff time, costs the township, the taxpayers quite a bit of money. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Any other council members want to comment on this? Councilman Siddiq?
Yeah, I see that first, second, third, and fourth violation. Is it in time period, like in the 6 month, all these violation, or 1 year period time, or lifetime? How these things work? First, second, third violation.
I'm going to defer to Mr. McSween on that.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
So with the ticketing system, and it was mentioned that the ticket is $25. So if the individual failed to pay the ticket or to make the correction of the violation, that's when it moves to fines. So that's if the violation still exists, then those fines will move on higher fines. So it's up to the discretion of the code enforcement officer. They can issue a fine every day the violation exists. They can put it on a schedule for once a week. They could put it on a schedule for every other day. It's a case basis.
So it's like it's no time period. Each violation, if it's not corrected, first, second, third, and fourth time, the penalty will be charged against this violation, right?
It can escalate. So again, if the violation still exists, let's say today, and the code enforcement officer can write a violation tomorrow, can write a violation Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or just write one once a week. But each time it can escalate.
Okay, thank you. I get it.
Thank you. Baran, Mayor Keffer, go ahead. You need to, yep, there you go.
So Councilman Gwynn raised his hand before I did, but I would like to speak after Councilman.
Okay. Councilman Gwynn?
I was just going to point out section E. Each day that the violation of the code continues shall constitute a separate offense. So it can build up very rapidly in it, but it does already prescribe that.
Thank you. Mayor?
I was just gonna say, and I don't mean to speak for Mr. McSween, but we were working on this together, and the idea behind the ticketing system is to get people into compliance sooner than what I call the citation system. So if your grass is this high, it's a ticket like a parking ticket that you've already broken the code. This is your fine for doing that. Whether or not you have trash cans, you put in your trash cans, or any of the other various, property maintenance and code enforcement issues that are addressed with it. And we're not trying to really penalize people. We just want to get as many people into compliance as possible. So, Mr. McSween, did you want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah, just to weigh in on that, Mayor. Again, it's to be a deterrent, but most of all, we want to see people take care of their property, so that we have to do this as much as possible. But this has always been an effective remedy throughout many municipalities, and definitely have seen good results from it. People tend to catch on quickly. You're paying a $25 ticket and you resolve it, well, then it's over. But then next week, if you have another violation, then that's $25 again. So it can escalate quickly, but now if it ends up going to fines and citations, well, then it can really spiral out of control. So it's really meant to be a deterrent. And again, just based off of past precedents, these seem to be a very effective tool enforcing property maintenance in a municipality.
Thank you. Councilman Silva? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a little question with the language. So on E and F, each day that a violation of the code continues shall constitute a separate offense. Would it be possible to change it to can? Would there be like sort of a legal ramification there? Because if someone is working with you in good faith to resolve it, or like if you feel like they're working with you in good faith to resolve an issue, would it be possible to somehow like that could like benefit them, where the fine wouldn't constantly accrue versus someone who completely ignores the fine or completely ignores the violation, as opposed to someone who's trying to work with you to solve a violation that would take, some amount of time. It would, or does shall mean that as well?
I don't want to speak for Mr. McSween, but really it's always at the discretion of the code official. That really is, in my experience, it's seldom used to do that. It's only if somebody is really not going into compliance that they do that. And frankly, district judges and Court of Common Pleas judges really don't like it. In general, they don't like provisions like that, or you constantly to cite someone. So it's only really an extraordinary circumstance. As Mr. McSween has talked about previously, it's really up to the discretion of the code official to use it anyway. I don't know, Mr. McSween, what your experience is.
So in situations, again, there isn't a one size fits all. When a code officer encounters a violator, if there's communication, then they should exercise discretion and work with the property owner to get the matter corrected, not continue to cite them. And I mean, that's something I would enforce. If there's dialogue and the person is quite honestly trying to get their situation taken care of, then we want to definitely give them that opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, great. And Councilman Burke? Go ahead.
Thanks, Laura. Mr. McSween, one question, and pertains to what Matt said, Mr. Silva said. If something happened on a Friday and it was concrete, obviously you got to go get a permit to pour more new concrete, chop it up, get crushed stone and all that. That takes more than a day or two. There's got to be a timeline or a report or something instead of just a citation. Is there going to be an actual report given to the homeowner or the business owner? And then there's a timeline, or we just going to go, well, as long as he's working with you, we're fine?
Well, there's always a violation notice. The violation notice states the address, the violation, and cites where in the code the violation comes from, and also gives a timeline in which the issue must be corrected. So again, yes, this discretion must be exercised, but there has to be a reasonable attempt for things to be taken care of. So if something were to occur on a Friday evening, well, yes, we understand, want to give reasonable amount of time. Also, in my experience, judges don't appreciate when you don't give a resident enough time to correct a violation. So it's just the right thing to do to make sure they have enough time to take care of whatever corrections, property maintenance they need to take care of. And it's just understanding as well that, for certain situations, let's say plumbers or someone coming out, well, one, they have to call someone and that person may not be readily available. So you take all those things into account that, well, they have to find a contractor, and then they have to contractors to come out, and they have to write an estimate. So that's the time in which you would be reasonable and, put a date on things. But, we all have come to a point where we understand that, okay, we've given enough time, or we haven't given enough time. So it's all about discretion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McSween.
Welcome.
Are there any other council members that want to ask a question or express a concern on this resolution? I'm seeing none. Bob, did you want to, check with Councilman Burke and Councilwoman Phillips to make sure they're cool with moving this resolution forward, assuming the ordinance gets moves forward as well?
Yes.
I'm good, Laura. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then do you want to check on any other, then we have our tax assessment next for the property tax assessment. Courtney, is that you or Sean?
I have it.
Okay, go for it.
Thank you. There is a property tax assessment at issue in terms of a settlement. Their property at issue is located at 911 Fairfax Road. The property was purchased for $80,000, and the purchase price was lower than the implied fair market value, which was $83,450. And so the landowner asked for a reassessment. The property was reassessed for $67,680, and the implied fair market value increased to $119,794. And the landowner then appealed to the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. So the landowner and the school district have agreed to a assessment value of $59,220, which equates to $104,819 of an implied fair market value. And just for clarification, implied fair market value is the value that's calculated based on the property's current assessment times the common level ratio. So it's a little bit more of a complicated formula, but it just for clarification, that's how it works. So when I'm saying implied fair market value, that's what it is. So their council has to approve this settlement, and that's why we're coming to you and requesting approval. This was discussed, I believe, last meeting with the finance committee in committee, and that was the conversation that we had. Sean, is there something else you wanted to add?
No, that's really it. The only other question is, Alexis brought it up, that previously tax assessment appeals had been completed, or council action had been by resolution. My experience in most other places, and of course I'm relatively new to Upper Darby, is that it's done just by a simple motion. We checked the administrative code and the home rule charter, and it said it could be done by motion. So just in case anybody was interested and why it would be a motion as opposed to what people were used to in the past, that is the only reason why I suggested it. So
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just want to make sure that the people know that the school district has already reviewed this offer and settlement, and they have agreed to it. And it is based upon, since they are the driving factor, having the larger tax ratio on it, that was approved by them, and we should also approve it.
Yes, and as Courtney mentioned, the finance committee had their own executive session prior to our previous meeting where this tax assessment was discussed. And I believe we mentioned it at that meeting as well, that we had an executive session for the tax assessment. So just to clarify the realm. Great, so this will move forward to the next meeting as a motion. Great, and then Bob, if you want to check with your other, check with the rest of your, to see if anyone has anything else for your committee.
Does anybody else from the committee have anything for the council?
No.
Anybody from council have anything for this committee? Thank you. Hearing none, we're moving on.
Great. All right, so up next is Public Health and Environmental Affairs. Councilman Silva is the chairman. Members are Councilwoman Billups, Councilman Siddiq, and Councilman Tunis Jr. And we have no resolutions or ordinances, so take it away, Councilman Silva.
Yes, at this time, do any members of the committee have anything to put forward to council? Or do any members of council have anything to put forward for the environmental or the Public Health or Environmental Affairs Committee?
And I do have to say, we do have, I forgot, we have a COVID-19 update. So if the mayor or Vince would like to give us an update, I know that there was a press release of sorts that went out today, or a Delco, Upper Darby Delco alerts that went out today. If you'd like to give us an update on COVID-19. Go ahead, Mayor Cover.
So as I had said earlier, and in the Delco update, we're still in the red zone, according to the governor's matrix. And we are averaging over 100 new cases a week or more, and just want people to continue to practice social distancing, to wear their masks and the gloves if they have to, but please don't throw them on the sidewalk or the street. We've gotten a couple emails from residents who they want council and the administration to come up with some sort of solution, which I don't know what it is, but I think we just all have to be mindful that we're all in this predicament together. We're all going through this. It's a tough time, but just take the extra time, please, and throw your personal protection gear in a trash can. Just contain the containment. You know, we want to slow this down as quickly as possible. We don't have a staff of people that are going around sweeping the streets and all that stuff. So just please be mindful of each other. We're working with the state towards, we calculate all the extra costs that we have associated with the pandemic. And another reason why we're not going to go against the governor in terms of when we open up is that we want to get reimbursed for our extra expenses. So other than that, I mean, this feels, like I said earlier, it feels like we've been doing this for a long time, but we might have to keep doing it. And as Councilwoman Fraglia pointed out, we might not be able to have the tot lot and these things that we're used to having each year. But the sooner we get through this, the sooner we will be able to have our regular programming back. And I'm not sure if the CAO would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just to underscore what the mayor has said there. I mean, as we continue to coordinate with the county and the state, the county let us know that Monday, this past Monday, was the highest recorded number of fatalities in Delaware County. And so I think when folks are watching the national news, oftentimes the national news is reporting on what's happening in New York City or what's happening in California or the Pacific Northwest. And it's important for people here locally to remember that those places are 2 or 3 weeks ahead of us on the curve of cases. And so it's tempting to think, oh, I see them shutting down a field hospital in Central Park in New York. This must be over. But it's definitely not over. It's definitely not over in Delaware County. So I did just want to underscore and reiterate the mayor's sentiment that, you know, we still need to take it very seriously and be vigilant. And, you know, it's dangerous for our township workers when people are putting gloves and masks and things on the ground, you know, not properly disposing of them. And so we really do need to, just to reiterate what the mayor said, we really do need to stick together and be mindful of each other as we continue to try to get through this.
Thank you. And I realized that we did keep the police on the agenda for this month, but we didn't necessarily clarify with Superintendent Timothy Bernhardt. Has he given you any updates lately on how our police are faring in this COVID-19 response realm? Anybody? Mayor or Vince, go ahead.
Yeah, nothing particularly new to report. I mean, thankfully, incidents, you know, continue to be a little bit down with less activity and less people out on the street. So in some sense, that is a positive. You know, they continue to be out there doing what they need to do. But again, it's another reason to be mindful and be respectful and observe social distancing, because some people, like our police, do need to still be out, and those things create a higher risk for them.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Then Matt, please continue on your report.
Yes. Well, actually, before I conclude, I just like to say I had I just kind of reiterating what the mayor and chief administrative officer said. I had a bit of a scare myself, where a few days ago I found out that one of my coworkers was tested positive, and I was actually in lockdown in this very room for like the last week. But fortunately, I'm not positive. But at the time, I just want to reiterate that basically, like, my coworker was visited by a family member who had a coworker who was positive, and then he found out that his family member that visited him was positive, and then, you know, I mean, this thing can really snowball. So if nothing else, please do the social distancing. Please be careful where you go and when you go, and if it's not necessary, please just let it wait. Nothing is more important than your safety, the safety of your family. I mean, that was my greatest fear here is that, perhaps I'd like transferred this to my own family, and thankfully that was not the case. But it was like, by statistical anomaly, it didn't happen. So it's and again, that's not a lot of comfort. So I'm asking people to please be careful and please be mindful of who you speak with on a day-to-day basis, because you may not find out for 5-6 days until after the fact that you are positive with something, and in that period of time you can infect quite a slew of people. I'm thankful that my coworker was cognizant of who he had spoken to in the week previous before he found out. This is like, for us to get through this thing as unscathed as possible, we're all going to have to be vigilant about it. I apologize if this is out of turn, but I did want to just say that.
Actually, I don't think it's out of turn at all. I think the biggest snag that our society is having right now is that people are seeing it. I mean, you mentioned to me before, they're seeing it in the abstract. They don't think it really relates to them until someone comes down with it, and then it becomes very real. And your point of social distancing, wearing the mask is so crucial to make sure that you're not spreading it to others. If someone around you happens to have it, and what if they have it and they don't know it? And it could be weeks and weeks later down the line, or they never know it. And then, unless you suddenly get sick, you won't know and necessarily know who you got it from. So it is really important to, wear your mask everywhere you go. And, anytime you're anywhere near someone, keep that distance as much as possible. I mean, I do the, grocery shopping, and you're going down an aisle and someone's coming in the other direction, and I make a left, not because I need to, but I'm just trying to avoid other people as much as possible. So yeah. And Councilman Hafiz, go ahead. You had your hand up. So go ahead and turn on your mic.
Yeah, there's been a lot of inaccurate information flowing around. As of May 8th, which is this Friday, Governor Wolf is reopening 24 counties. However, Delaware County is not one of them. And I've received some emails from, well, there was one email I received from a constituent that they may have got. I don't know if any of your residents or constituents have experienced this. There's an email going around that all counties are opening on May 8th, and that is inaccurate. And if you do are wondering, if you do receive that information, it's best to reach out to either your state representatives, your state senators, as well as the township also. So I just want to make the public aware on that.
Thank you. That's a very good point. Okay, anyone else? Sorry, go ahead, Councilman Sadiq.
Are we in COVID-19 update?
We've kind of actually, we're sort of,
It's like, okay. I would like to thank our mayor, Barbara Ann Keffer, to give me $16 of food, pre-made food. And I set up a table on 69th Street and Walnut Street corner, and open table, and distributed, and people like it. And we have more demand. If we can get some more food, pre-made food, so we can distribute it in certain corner of our township.
So was that done through your mosque as well, or?
No. This is the pre-made food I get from the township.
Right, didn't it go through your mosque as part of the mosque, or just you as a council person?
Both combined. We set up table outside. It's not in the mosque, in the street. Table outside, and open table. People come, and anybody can grab the food.
Right. No, I think what I was trying to clarify, that the mosque, you worked with your mosque as similar to the other food banks or the churches that are working to feed the public that need food, that you were working with the mosque to accomplish that goal.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's special thanks to our mayor on behalf of myself and our mosque and our community at large.
Thank you. Mayor, did you want to weigh in? Wait, your mic is off. Your mic is off. Wait.
Okay, sorry. Yes, we got a shipment. Mute. We did get a shipment of pre-made food from it's the National Guard. I forget what the acronym is for them, but we gave them out to the mosque and also the St. Bernadette's food pantry. We have a little bit left over, and we're trying to work with the county and the state to get more food and get some just to get some more assistance so we can help other 501c3s and other people. But I think Vince, CAO Rangione, you can speak to more of some of the programs that we're looking at or trying to get involved with.
Go ahead, Vince.
Yeah, sure. So as the mayor mentioned, I mean, a number of churches, mosques, nonprofit groups have already picked up food, and we're working on expanding the food distribution. We've been working with the Share Food program to try to get a fresh food distribution. The current food that we're distributing, the acronym is MRE, Meals Ready to Eat. Yeah. But the Share Food program, we're working with them on a produce and milk program. I don't know if folks might be aware that a lot of produce and milk is actually going to waste in the supply chain during the crisis. And so we're trying to work with them to target that, to make fresh food available in Upper Darby to Upper Darby residents who might be struggling with food insecurity. And part of the theory is that right now that food insecurity will get worse as this goes on, as people are laid off or out of work for a longer period of time. The need will increase. So we're trying to time the implementation of these programs, or the ramping up of them, over the next couple of weeks when we feel like the need will be increasing. We're also working to try to create a small business grant program, and the idea being that we can try to reach businesses that have not been able to access the state and federal money thus far because the application requirements or the reporting requirements have been too stringent or too complicated, and we feel like we might have a better opportunity to reach those folks with our program. The mayor has also been really focused on and passionate about trying to find some way to provide rent and mortgage relief. Again, the feeling is that as this thing wears on, people will struggle more and more to meet their housing obligations, to pay their rent, to pay their mortgage. And so the mayor has really been directing the staff to try to find ways, work with the state and work with nonprofits to find funding to help with mitigation of rent and mortgage problems. We don't want people being foreclosed on or getting kicked out of their rental properties. Right now, there's a moratorium where people cannot be evicted during the crisis. But of course, the fear is that as soon as that crisis is lifted, people could be in trouble, and we want to help people avoid that situation. And so that's something that, again, the mayor has really been directing the staff to try to focus our resources on. So those are just some of the programs that we've been looking at and trying to implement.
Thank you. Actually, I'm really glad you pointed that out, because that has been a question that constituents have asked us. And also, to get back to the Share Food program, a bunch of council members have mentioned if there is anything they can, is that a program that they could do financial contributions to on behalf of the township to help make that, and also other residents have inquired about being able to make a financial donation to help residents get food that they so much need. So is there I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely. So I think when we first started the conversation with the Share Food program, that was definitely going to be a part of it, and I think it still will. I think it still will be a part of it where folks will be able to make those contributions, donations, and help us bolster the plan. The whole situation is kind of evolving so quickly that together with the Share Food program, I think we might be able to access federal money. And so that will really dramatically bring down the cost to the township to provide that food. But even so, we'll always be able to do more with the donations. So we're just trying to focus on getting the program up and running. And once we have it, we'll let folks know how they can contribute for sure.
great, thank you, thank you. Councilman Siddiq, before you speak, or well, you were finishing up. Go ahead and finish up what you were saying.
This is a question for Mr. Vince. As a township, we can collect a donation for the help of the family victim like COVID-19 or anybody needy family. We can provide dry food or stuff like that, not from our township fund, from the donation fund. Can we collect it legally or illegally?
Yeah, so we would be legally allowed to do that, and it's something that actually we were talking about the other day with our library board, and it's something that we've discussed with our fire department as well. There are some logistical issues with how the collection and distribution would work because of the social distancing mandates, and it's also an area that a lot of other organizations already have covered, and so we don't want to compete with those other folks. We want to try to address issues that haven't yet been addressed. So that's one of the reasons that we're focused on the rent and mortgage mitigation. It's one of the reasons that we were happy to partner with the county today in a diaper distribution. We're trying to find areas where we can have impact that sort of aren't already being covered. So that's one of the reasons that we haven't gone as much in that direction yet.
So I would like to add like township, Upper Darby Township Disaster Fund. It can cover everything, any disaster happen. So we can create that one for forever, Upper Darby Township Disaster Fund or emergency fund.
Right.
Can we create that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I mean, I have to say off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the particulars would be, but I think that if the council chose to, they could probably create sort of an ongoing reserve fund and allocate money for it year after year, and it would build up over time, hopefully, until if and when there was a disaster. Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea, and I think the council would be able to do that if it chose to.
I don't know which committee will follow this one. I would like to propose this one in future or next meeting to create a Upper Darby Township Disaster Fund.
A disaster fund?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, have you experienced any other municipalities doing something like that? I mean, I'm guessing Councilman Siddiq, you're thinking it as a fund that people would donate to versus taxpayer funds going to it, correct? Councilman Siddiq?
Yes, I'm talking about no taxpayer money. It's totally 100% donation money.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, that would have to be structured a little bit differently and sort of created a little bit differently. I misunderstood. Thank you, President Wentz.
Yeah, that would have to be an entity that it's actually not the township. It would have to be a 501c3. I don't know if Delaware County has one. I know Bucks and Montgomery County have one that are fulfilling a function like that. But there's no reason why a group of residents in the township, which may include a council member or two, couldn't take part in doing something like that. But it would have to be, there are extensive, hate to say it, legal setup costs to that. I couldn't really do that as township solicitor, but I'd be happy to help out at a, discounted, greatly discounted rate to go ahead and, help Upper Darby if that's what Upper Darby wanted to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna talk details in future.
Yeah, because you have to think about what that would look like, right? It's like what's the process, who would run it, what the budget would be like and all that. So
yeah, I do know that one.
If the township is not going to be involved in that, so that's a big project. Or you have to look and see if it's something that already exists and if we can partner with the county. I'm just thinking, if because it may already exist.
Well, City of Philadelphia has it. It's run by City of Philadelphia.
What you mean, Phil Abundance?
No.
Oh, because I know Phil Abundance exists.
They have disaster. They have fund.
Yeah, as I said, Councilman Sadiq, I know Montgomery County and Bucks have a COVID-19 fund that is helping with food insecurity and various other issues. I haven't heard about it in research. I just came across in some of my other solicitorships. I'd be surprised if Delaware County didn't have a similar entity, but.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it may already exist. We just might not know. So, that might be something that you may want to look into.
Yeah, we can talk about it. It's a good thing for our community.
Yeah.
And for our township. And we'll talk about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think if like the,
Matt,
sorry, Council President. Yes. I think that is something actually that the Public Health and Environmental Affairs Committee can meet on the side. And I certainly do think it's certainly an idea worth considering and researching, and I look forward to doing that. In a private session. I think that's something we should move forward with. But I guess at this time, can we move that to a private session, and then we'll continue with this meeting here.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. And then all right, yeah, so I look forward to that. We'll set that up. Thank you, Sadiq. That's a great idea. And do any other members of the council have any other items for this council at this time for public health and environmental affairs? And I guess all right, and then I feel like if the COVID-19 update is wrapped up, and then that would conclude the report for public health and environmental affairs.
Great, thank you. Next up is Leisure Services Committee. Lisa Fralia is chairwoman. Members are Councilman Silva, Blackwell, and Tunis Jr. Go ahead, Lisa. You can turn your mic on.
Does anybody on the committee have anything to bring forward to Leisure Services?
No.
Anybody on council? That concludes our report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is Public Safety Committee. Chairman Councilman Burke. Members are council members Blackwell, Silva, and Tunis Jr. Go ahead, Councilman Burke.
Does anybody on the committee have anything to bring forward tonight? Any council members? That concludes the report.
Okay. And then Event Planning Committee.
Laura, it looked like that Councilman Tunis as well as Councilman Glenn had something to say.
I'm sorry, I was looking at my paper. Thank you for catching that. Councilman Tunis.
I just wanted to thank the Upper Darby Police Department. There's been a lot of some various public safety concerns regarding the various apartment complexes in my district. And after meeting with the superintendent as well as representation from the police department, changes have been made, and the residents appreciate that. And I appreciate that too.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councilman Gwynn? Go ahead, turn on your mic.
I am. I've received calls, I'm sure everybody else has too, with regards to parking in the immediate area, particularly as you have had college students returning when they can't complete their semesters at school when they return home. And you have the situation, just cars in general, finding a parking space on the streets. And the problems that the police, I'm sure, are just going around and ticketing where it's appropriate. The individuals are violating a fire space or something of that nature. But the people are asking and hoping that we could have a little bit of, shall we say, mercy as they're trying to find a parking space when there aren't any available. I know we've talked about permitting and what we might do there, and that's something for a future time. But I just bringing that up to the group.
Okay, Vince, would you like to weigh in on that a little bit?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I caught it exactly right. People, the concern is too much ticketing of people who are parking in a fire zone?
There are just too many cars, if you will, returning to the areas that normally we wouldn't have the individuals here because they'd be away at school. They are all staying in their house. They aren't going out, and the parking spaces are at a premium. And other individuals who do have to go to work and they come home, be it the nurses and or other individuals, there isn't space available for them to park that is relatively within 3 or 4 blocks of their home. And they're just having difficulty getting into spaces, finding any space around there. And they're asking if there might be relaxing of the ticketing until such time as we can get people back to work so that they're back in schools.
Yeah, so the ticketing has been significantly relaxed / eliminated for the most part, with the exception of safety violations. I mean, that's why I referenced the fire
what I
zone.
said to her.
I'm sorry?
That is what I had relayed to her as well, that
Okay.
more than likely is that type of situation that the person's running into.
Right. I mean, there are certain things that, create more of a public safety problem than they sort of would solve on the other end. So we are trying to be very understanding in that regard.
And I know the mayor has indicated that we're looking toward moving toward a permit parking at some point in the near future, we hope.
Mayor?
No, that's right, but what, unfortunately, that, just like the street sweeping pilot program, these things are just gonna be in a whole pattern for a while. But parking is a big concern, and our parking enforcement department and the police are just really ticketing the public safety, the fire zones, the hydrants, parking at the corners, just to we have to make sure that when and if our first responders need to get somewhere, that they can get where they need to go. So.
And actually, I just want to point out, for the resident who's expressing the concern, keep in mind, summertime is coming. The college students would be coming home around now anyway, And during the summer, the students are all back anyhow. So, I mean, I realize that with everyone being sheltered in place, there's a lot less parking on the streets. And so maybe people need to park in their driveways for those who have driveways more. So, I mean, it's kind of, you know, balance it out that way, you know, find a way to reduce the number of people parking on the street where you can, I guess. Okay, Bob,
Yeah,
are you all good?
I agree with what you said, and I was saying the same thing to her as well.
Okay.
And there was more than one person. I should also qualify that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. All right, anyone else wanted to weigh in? Because I know I wasn't looking. Oh, Councilman Siddiq, I'm sorry, I missed you. I wrote you down and then I missed you. Go ahead, Councilman Siddiq. Yeah, there.
Regarding the public safety, the people know that that our county is still in red zone. When the governor lifted the 24 counties, they said that Delaware County is one of them, which previously we talked about it. There's any way the township or our police department can miking around the township that still the social distancing, wearing the mask and the gloves, it works. And we can humbly request to our resident still follow the rules and the regulation regarding the COVID-19. Because the reason I saw many store, because I move around, work around, look around, many store they don't follow it. Many, at least one of the religious place, they still open, and hundreds of people, they're praying together. It's unsafe for other people too. It's not only for them, other people too, because we don't know who has it, COVID-19 or positive things. So how we can implement little bit more better way, people still has to stay home as much as possible and following all this social distancing and wear the gloves and mask. Can we do the miking on behalf of our township or flyer or still saying that we are still in red zone?
So are you suggesting that you want the police to drive around with a loudspeaker announcing to the public that we are still in shelter in place and to maintain distancing and wear your mask?
Yes. Just proposal.
I would say that's a Vince Francione question.
It's an interesting idea. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think we have to look into it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about noise ordinances and so forth as far as specific to that.
If it's not that much financial involvement there, then we can try this one. It works.
Right.
Right. I would think that I'm gonna guess that social distancing and wearing masks is something that we're gonna be doing for a long time. I don't see us coming back in the near future. So I think that's, and it's been on all the press conferences with the mayor, with the governor, with, you know, our county council and everything. So that's something that is out there in every new, I mean, there's commercials about it coming from the state on TV. I've seen them. So yes. Councilwoman Phillips, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure if it falls under public safety. It's about noise.
Mm-hmm.
Does it fall under public safety?
Well, that's the question. We'll see.
Okay, so it's actually about me. Well, it's not about me, but my neighbor plays his music way past 8 o'clock. And not that I'm a old person, but you know, I have to go to work the next day, and he has all this bass in his music, right? And it's really loud. and it comes through the walls. So I don't know anything about that. And I have another neighbor that asked me to bring up about his next door neighbor, about her children. And I don't know what you can do about people's children, but I said that I would bring it up. But I just don't know about noise when it comes to music. I mean, his music is loud. Like he's having a party. Loud.
Right. I mean, there is a noise ordinance, I believe. I'm not sure what time of the night, but let's see, Courtney. What? Okay, so is there, Sean, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at our noise ordinance specifically. Normally there is generic, unless if we have calibrated equipment that measures dBA or noise decibel level. I assume we have an older ordinance which deals with general public health, welfare, and safety to those, usually time limits related to those. I'll be happy to look at it. In the interim, I don't know if Mr. Rongione wants to comment or anybody, but my experience is call the police if you can't deal with, navigating that with your own neighbor. And
I mean, I can. Trust me, I can. Yeah. I'm just saying, I didn't know if it was an ordinance or not, but I mean, I can do it.
I would be shocked if there weren't. Almost every township has a noise ordinance, yes.
Okay.
And we did update it in the past year because there was a litigation that the township was in that needed an updated new noise ordinance. Okay. I just don't remember all the specifics pertaining to it.
Okay.
But I do know that we did update it within the past year.
Okay.
If I recall correctly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So our next committee is the Event Planning Committee. Councilwoman Billups is the chair, and council members Hafiz Jr., Blackwell, and Silva are members. Councilwoman Billups, take it away.
Sure. Anyone from the committee have anything to report?
No. Well,
Councilman, I see you, Councilman.
Go ahead, Councilman Tunis.
I just wanted to say Ramadan Kareem to our Muslim community here in Upper Darby Township. I'm wishing that they have a generous Ramadan and they get through this safely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody from council?
Yes. Councilman Siddiq, go ahead.
Hi, Michelle. People waiting long for a few months and they are waiting for the delayed birthday party, the marriage ceremony, and big event. So what we are thinking at the township, as soon as lockdown is over, people gonna jump on for the partying. We will allow them to do it, or we still gonna hold it, the big party. I'm talking about the big events.
I would.
What big events? Which ones?
Any big events happening in the township, when the lockdown is over, then we will allow to the people like hundreds and thousands and people get together and do a partying thing, or we still want to censor them. We're gonna hold it until 100% virus is over.
Councilman Siddiq, the one thing that the governor has said repeatedly that that the rollout will be a slow process.
Yep.
I personally work in the entertainment business as a stagehand. I work rock and roll, I work debates, I work conventions, I work theater. I'm being told I'm not going back to work for at least 6 months to a year. So if that's what I'm being told in my business, I would expect for people to anticipate not getting back into thousands of people in a stadium anytime soon. Just as a abstract.
So what I know, because I'm a big football fan. So, and what they're talking about with the NFL is still holding football, but holding it without fans. So that's what I know.
Okay, all right.
Councilman Gwynn, you raised your hand. You got to turn your mic on.
Yep.
There you go.
Just wanted to raise the question, is Juneteenth going to occur, or is it going to be delayed, or is it, what's the story on that?
I haven't heard anything. Councilman Tunis, have you heard anything?
Go ahead and turn your mic on.
No, as far as I know, I haven't heard any updates or anything on that. That's essentially what I know about Juneteenth, just as much as you.
Yeah.
And then the Upper Darby Pride Festival has been canceled for this year. They're going to focus on having an event next year for Pride for the LGBTQ plus community. And Earth Day for the 4th District Community Group has been postponed to possibly June, depending on how the rollout is, and it would be a delivery of plants and flowering kits for kids possibly in June. But it's also relative to how the rollout is and where we are as far as that is concerned. So everything's tentative.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything for this committee?
No.
Okay.
Anyone else? Well, that concludes our report. Thank you.
Great, thank you. At this point in time, we have the window for old business. Does anyone have any old business they want to bring to the table? Okay, seeing none. New business. Oh, wait, actually, I'm bad. Councilman Silva, go for it. Go ahead, turn your mic on. There you go.
Yes. At our most recent voting meeting, something was said about someone's illiteracy. I'm not going to delve further into the topic, but it did raise to mind the fact that particularly with everything going on and the rate it's going on, I'm concerned about actually the illiterate among us. 1 in 10 people in Delaware County are what's called functionally illiterate. That means not that they are unable to read, but reading like a large page of text would be an issue for them. When you also consider people that are exhausted through work or childcare or anything else, I mean so much about what's going on with this crisis is basically handed to us in text. I've done a little research on perhaps what we could perhaps do to make people who are, I don't mean to say illiterate in like a derogatory way, because I find that somewhat callous, but people where this is an issue, what's the best way for us to reach these people? First off, I'd like to acknowledge the mayor. The mayor has been doing a lot of video updates, and I think this is a great way to get the message out to people that otherwise wouldn't be able to have access to information, to programs and aid which could be available to them. And if we could consider using or review the use of perhaps radio or public access television to also reach a group of people that, in my mind, are perhaps some of the most vulnerable among us, and who are most likely going to need the aid of these programs that could be available to them if they were aware of them. Also, I found it odd too, but the use of memes, as Laura was alluding to, our Facebook page for our Township Council and for the Township, and also when I say functionally illiterate, again, like these people can read, but like a wall of text would usually scare them off, whereas a simple meme might help direct people to aid and programs which could be of benefit to them and their families. So again, I just wanted to bring that up because when that was discussed at the last meeting, I was a little taken back. But again, it brought to my mind people that I find are like extremely vulnerable, people that are usually forgotten about, and people that we should do our best as a government body to aid and reach out to. So that's all I have for new business.
Oh, okay, great. That was under new business. Great. Great, thank you. Councilwoman Blackwell?
This is more on the good and welfare if everybody is done. The National Nurses Week began today. And I just want to acknowledge that, thank our nurses for all that they have done and all that they do and all that they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. So Councilman Siddiq, do you have new business?
Yeah, yesterday was the food distribution for the Delco Life Center, 63rd and Market. We provided around 250 people food. When I take the food over there, I saw the Life Center is empty totally and dark. I get scared. Then somebody opened the door, and then there's all the homeless people, they are sheltering in the hotel in Philadelphia, and they're gonna take the food over there.
Okay.
And beginning of the holy month of Ramadan, I send the Ramadan greetings to everyone. And this is the 1 year, and this year is about since 20 years, we provided hundreds of people food and dinner every night for 30 days. But this year we could not do it. And some of the people get together, collect the money, and dropping to the food to the needy family, like a dry food, canned food, dropping there from our community. And also they are planning to cook a food and distribute it from 69 and Walnut Street. So I will update the date and when food will be distributed.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has new business? I actually do have some new business, but I just want to make sure everyone got an opportunity to speak. Okay, so I'm just going to read something that I wrote earlier just to keep my thoughts collected. In January, school director David Neal asked how are residents able to voice their concerns in the creation of our ordinances. The answer at the time was not until the day the ordinance is on the agenda to be voted on. Then residents can comment during the public hearing. This is because the first Wednesday of the month is a committee meeting where there is no voting by council, no public comment. Our home rule charter only requires one public meeting a month and gives no guidance on a committee meeting as it is. Therefore, I propose we change our committee meeting to a working meeting, which is a public meeting with minimal voting by council. It includes the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, public comment forum of the 30 minutes that we normally have, and the first reading of any ordinances that make it out of committee, and a vote to advertise any such ordinances. If we make the first Wednesday of the month a working meeting, then the answer to School Director Neal's question would be during the public comment forum of the first Wednesday of the month, thusly giving residents a voice in the ordinances and resolutions that govern Upper Darby Township. This will also help to increase the transparency of Upper Darby Township Council. So I just wanted to put that out there to you. I understand that this is something that many municipalities around us are currently doing and so forth. So if Solicitor Kilkenny can weigh in. That would
I don't want to speak to municipalities around us necessarily, but in my experience, many of the other municipalities that I work for use that format. They have a workshop meeting, which is where the sausage is made, so to speak, kind of like was done tonight. But at the conclusion of the workshop meeting, then the motions to advertise are made and then move forward to council. So you have essentially 2 working meetings. It also serves in the, the first meeting or the workshop meeting, then can also serve as an emergency action to be taken on an item if it's needed to be done in an exigent way. So actually in almost every other municipality I represent, that is kind of, that's usually the format on how they do things.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Does any council members want to weigh in on this concept, on this idea? Anybody? Sorry, Councilman Burke?
Yes, Laura, thanks. I think we would have to, if we would do this, we would have to streamline what's on the agenda. Meeting was moving well today. If we add another 30 minutes and a few other things, we're back into midnight again. So I'd be very cautious to add any more time into of having 2 meetings, 6 and 7 hours each time every month. So I would be completely against this.
Okay, anyone else? Councilman Silva? Your microphone, Councilman Silva?
Am I muted now or no?
You're good
Okay.
now.
Okay. All right. Super. Yeah, I know that we've had quite a few special meetings that sort of accommodate, and I think this would eliminate a lot of those. I think the idea of having a special meeting, like when things are truly special, and we are living in special times, but I think I think it might help us streamline some of that, and I certainly think that would be worth looking into. I also think it would help us be able to put business forward in a more timely manner. So I would be for it. I certainly think maybe it's something we could review if Councilwoman Billups agrees, maybe with Law and Government, and we could look forward to putting something forward with this, if she would be willing.
Councilwoman Billups?
Yeah, we can meet to talk about it. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
great. Councilman Bonnet? Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I just want to be sure I understand is that we would have a format where we would have a work session. We would discuss legislation and then move to a voting meeting immediately, like we have been doing with a special meeting. Do I understand? Is that what I understand?
Right, that basically for the ordinances that we agreed would come out of committee at that point in time, we could switch over to the first reading of that ordinance and then also make a motion to advertise that ordinance so that it could be voted on on the 3rd Wednesday of that particular month, instead of having to hold over the first reading. Instead of an ordinance taking 2 months, it can be done in 1 month.
Well, I am against that. I think we need the time between meetings, between discussing for the first time legislation. I like to have the opportunity, as my constituents do, to vet any legislation, think it through. I think we need to make better use of our committees, like the Planning, Zoning, and Building Code Committee went through the Property Maintenance Code discussion, and we're going to do it again. We'll have had 2 meetings to consider an ordinance. I think more time has to be invested in our committees to develop these ordinances and have opportunities to have receive input from the community on any legislation that we're considering, whether it's a resolution or an ordinance. So I would be opposed to expediting these resolutions and ordinances as being proposed. We just need more time, and I don't think it's fair to our constituents, and there's really no rush to do this kind of thing.
Well, actually, I would have to say that if we turn the first Wednesday of the month into a working meeting, then it actually gives residents more of an opportunity to be involved because they can make a comment during the committee side of the equation while it's still being formulated before the first reading. Right now, they don't have a say until the meeting we go to vote on it. They don't, so that when an ordinance comes out of committee, it then goes to its first reading. They can comment at so on May 20th, for example, for any ordinances that have come out of this meeting, they can comment on it in public comment, but nothing's going to be changed or touched of that ordinance until it goes to the June meeting, third Wednesday of the month, when it would be voted on. It doesn't mean they get more of a voice. They actually get less of a voice. If it
Well,
becomes,
let's add that.
you
I'm
do
sorry.
not have the floor, and I'm not
Go ahead.
finished. So if the first Wednesday of the month was a public meeting, then they have the opportunity to have public comment on the ordinances that are on the agenda. They already have it in written form because it's already been posted on the website. And so therefore they have more of an opportunity to have a voice in how the ordinance is written as committee is working on it. So anything they say in the public comment section of that meeting would then also transfer into the discussion with council as we discuss the particular ordinances during the committee portion of the meeting. So they actually would have more of a word on the situation. I do see Councilman Heffies and Councilman Silva. Just want to let you know, I do see you, and Councilman Wagner. So they would have more of a voice in that situation.
Well, then why?
I'm sorry, Councilman. Councilman Silva.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just like a point of order here, but I believe the Law and Government Rules and Procedures Committee was going to look into this. So I'm not sure. We're debating legislation that's not been through committee at all. I appreciate their input. I mean, maybe we should put something together and then we could look at it after it's been put together.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Councilman Heffies.
Yeah, I was pretty much going to say that. We aren't looking at anything with substance yet. We're just having a conversation. I don't think it's necessary to state our positions yet until we get something concrete. And it just, from what I see, it just seems to be transparency, making things more transparent. We've seen a lot of success when people have physical ordinances they can reference and they can say, oh, I don't agree with this line. So I just think this just brings them a part of the process. But like you said, it's a point of order.
Right, because we haven't even met yet.
Yeah, there isn't actually anything written. There's nothing, because there isn't anything in the Home Rule Charter specifying how the committee is run. Committee meetings are run, so it's really open for us to run it how we want to run it, and so forth. So, and then Councilman Wagner, you wanted to say something? You need to turn your microphone on.
Thank you. Just real briefly, I want to underscore something that was said a few minutes ago, but I don't think anywhere near enough attention is being paid to it in this discussion and in our deliberations generally. Brian Burke pointed out some minutes ago, and I'm going to reiterate, the real point that we need to be focused on here is that our meetings are too long. They are consistently too long, and that's just not a good thing. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. When we get into these meetings that go into such lengthy, late hours, the quality of the discussion degenerates. Very important points can be obscured by a lot of other things on the agenda. I don't think that we're exercising anywhere near enough discretion about what goes on each of these agendas. Tonight, we must have dealt with, what, 4 different ordinances and a couple of resolutions as well. It's too much. And I think it's detracting from the quality of our meetings. That's where we need to put our focus, is getting control of the length of these meetings. I think something was brought up about this too by Councilwoman Feralia. Was it either last meeting or the meeting before? I'm not sure where we are with that, but it goes to the same point. Thank you.
Yes, Councilwoman Feralia met with the Law and Government Committee, and it was discussed, and in that discussion was to try and reduce the number of ordinances discussed at any given meeting. So we were able to get it down by 4 by moving 2 social media related ones to one of the months in the future. And the mayor and CAO really felt, and I agreed with them, that the 4 ordinances that we discussed today were really important for the township for council to consider, and for the township to be able to continue to work their magic. So therefore, they were on the agenda, and the resolutions were on because they're connected to the property maintenance ordinance, and thusly that's the reason why they were part of the conversation. So we are consciously making an effort to not have more than 4 ordinances on any given meeting. That is definitely a concern of ours. Also, I did have a conversation with Solicitor Kilkenny and Solicitor Richardson and the mayor and CAO Rangione in reference to, in the past, there's no real specific clarification on how long public hearings have to be for ordinances. There's no clear references in the Home Rule Charter. Thusly, based on that, it seems that we could enforce for the public hearings, enforce the 30-minute rule for public hearings for ordinances, because that is the only reference we have for any public comment within our Home Rule Charter. So that is something that we had discussed to enforce in the future, that the public hearings for ordinances be a 30-minute window of time, which would help to downsize the length of time of the meeting.
I'm not disputing anything you just said. It's all well and good. The meetings are too long, Laura. They need to be significantly shorter. We took an important vote on an issue of great importance to this community at 1 o'clock in the morning. That should never, ever have happened.
Councilman Wagner,
we prevented from happening hereafter.
Councilman Wagner, thank you. You've stated that we are making concerted efforts to change the way we are doing things, but we also have to accomplish things. We also have to pass ordinances and resolutions to keep our township moving. So we have to do our jobs as far as that part of the equation. And that's part of the reason why, we downsize the number of ordinances for today, that other than those that had originally come to us. Okay. Councilman Gwynn, you need to turn your mic on.
I know.
Go.
Hi. I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I also agree that we need to get the meetings a little bit.
Your mic is off again. Turn your mic back on. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know why it did that. I agree with the concept that we have to get the time of the meeting to a more stable time period. I know we talked about in the past getting the emails sent to us. And I know the one time we had the ordinance, we went through like 31 different emails. Instead of maybe getting all of them for the meeting itself, can we air or get back to the chairman of that particular committee, let them see the emails and follow up with the people in the following day and see how things work relative to communicating to them, not holding up the meeting or holding up the time period that we're discussing things, but getting the other viewpoints and starting to take them in and understand what they're getting at and do it at a separate time.
We've been trying to get the ordinances and resolutions as early as possible. And as soon as we do get them, we are sending them out so that council members have as much time as possible to review them. So if a ordinance comes out that is specific to the finance committee and you've gotten it a week prior to the meeting, then you can schedule a finance committee meeting to discuss that ordinance. There's nothing that's stopping any chairperson of any of the committees that the moment you have a resolution or ordinance in your hot little hands to organize a meeting to discuss it. There's nothing that's stopping you from doing it. We're trying to get them to you as soon as possible. We're also making sure that it is sent to all council members so that they are aware of it and have an opportunity to read it as soon as possible, because not everyone's schedules are the same. And therefore, I don't want to wait on giving it to someone who's not in your committee to then find out they had a window that day that it was sent to your committee, that they could have read it. But by the time we did send it to them, they didn't have time. So it's a consideration thing to council members to get it to them as soon as possible. But every chair of every committee, once you've got stuff in your hands that you want to have a committee meeting, you have a committee meeting on it. We're trying to get it to you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Anyone else have any new business? Seeing none. So we are going to adjourn our meeting. It is 10:57. The time note at the bottom of the agenda is for Alexis and I. So 10:57 p.m. Thank you all for taking part. Thank you to all the residents who have stuck with us this whole time. You guys rock. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. You guys are amazing.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
See you later.
Courtney?
Good night.
Yeah, yes, Councilman Gwen.
Good night.